Of course, this was still considered good. At least it wasn't a direct death sentence. That would be truly severe. Everyone nodded. During the competition, they naturally couldn't interfere with each other. Although they were competitors, they absolutely could not interfere with each other. This was the range rule. This was not a martial arts competition. There was no need to interfere with each other. There was no need for that. Mistress colored glaze colored. Not. Region mistress colored. White. Glaze quickly. Mistress, colored to not. Quick of eyes and that the tutu, they said colored glaze swift to hands. With eyes. As be said, he to be the mistress to say to colored when they received the iron, they realized that they were just ordinary iron, similar to Fan Yu's ordinary dark steel. They could be found everywhere and were not worth much. They were similar to the stones outside. This time, Region Mistress Colored had thrown the iron. Could it be used as a forging material? Yi Tianyun took the iron and looked around carefully. It was indeed ordinary dark steel. There was not a single bright spot. This is the question. Yi Tianyun squinted his eyes and looked at the dark steel around him. He did not know what the Region Mistress Colored. He did not know what question the Region Mistress Colored would give, but judging from the dark steel, it was definitely not an easy question. But thinking about it, if it were too easy, there would be no point in setting a question. Of course, the more difficult the better. Only then would they be able to see their standards. All of you have received the dark steel, right? How long has it been since you last saw it? Region Mistress Colored looked at them and asked plainly. Everyone looked at each other awkwardly. Some of them had only glanced at it, and some had not even seen it before. How could they have seen such a piece of scrap iron? Most of the people present had grown up with a silver spoon in their mouths. They had never touched a piece of trash material like dark steel. At most, they had seen it. Of course, it did not mean that they did not know how to refine equipment. Since the materials were similar, there would not be a problem if the technique was strong. I believe many of you have not seen it before. Or perhaps you have seen it but have never touched it before. Region Mistress Colored said plainly, this time, the question is this dark steel. I know that none of you have used it before, but I will use something that none of you have used as a test topic. Of course, I know that some of you know about it, but this does not affect the fairness. After all, even if you have not used it before, you will be able to make use of it after some experimentation. This is your most basic foundation. If you don't even have this foundation, then don't bother staying in the palace of gods. Everyone's eyes turned solemn. These words were indeed true. Even if it was a stone, they would refine it into gold. After all, just because they could not do it didn't mean that others could not. This round's question is very normal. You will simply use this dark steel as the foundation and combine it with other materials to refine a weapon. The higher the grade, the higher the score. Let me first say that it is not simply adding dark steel into the materials, but using dark steel as the main material. If the weapon refined in the end does not have dark steel as the main material, then the score will be invalid. If they were to simply use dark steel to refine a weapon, even if the elders of the Palace of Gods were to refine it, they would not be able to refine a weapon of high quality. Therefore, materials had to be added, but the addition of materials was also very particular. Not all materials could be added to increase the grade crazily. Dark steel itself had a limited capacity. If some materials were to be smashed in, it would directly cause the dark steel to explode. It was unable to contain these overbearing materials, or it would be dominated by other ferocious materials. For example, adding an ore of a higher grade would immediately take over the position of dark steel. Dark steel would be reduced to a supporting role, and it would undoubtedly not receive any points. If it was refined in this way, the question set by Region Mistress Colored Glaze would naturally be meaningless. She wanted to refine as many high-grade materials as possible on this fragile piece of iron. This was a test of their control of fire, their knowledge of materials, and their research on fusion. It was a comprehensive test. With such a difficult question in the first round, everyone felt pressured. Interesting. The question set by Region Mistress Colored Glaze is indeed a little difficult. Yi Tianyun grabbed onto the dark steel and revealed a smile. This was not difficult for him at all. Chapter 1146. The fragility of dark steel was a headache for many participants. They could only try to find out how to refine it to the best effect. Looking at the participants' headaches, Glazed Region Mistress smiled brightly, as if this was the happiest thing for her. That's the general rules. Since few of you have touched the materials, you'll have more time. Half a month, Glazed Region Mistress continued. Everyone nodded. Half a month was enough for them to try. Since they were using the most common materials, the difficulty of refining was relatively low. What they needed to do was to try to fuse the materials to maximize the effects of dark steel. Little junior brother, you must do your best. Senior sister Fire Lotus nodded at Yi Tianyun to encourage him. Yi Tianyun nodded with a smile. He felt very warm in the face of their concern. At least they were not scheming against him. Not long after, the test began. Many participants immediately took out dark steel and began refining. They melted the dark steel again and again, then threw in materials of high quality to fuse and began to forge. Boom, boom, boom. It was just the beginning. Immediately, there were sounds of explosions, which meant that someone had directly exploded. The material of dark steel was too fragile. Randomly smashing rough materials would naturally cause an explosion. That participant's face was covered in dust. However, these were all small explosions, so there was no problem. It was just that it was really embarrassing to refine and explode in front of so many people. But no one would laugh at him. During this time, no one would have the time to laugh at others. They all knew that they could be the next person to refine and explode. If they wanted to try to match the perfect materials, they would need to refine more. It was very likely that they would also refine and explode. After all, they needed to test the true limits of dark steel. Only when they were stuck at the limit could they accommodate more precious materials in the limited space. Yi Tianyun calmly took out a lot of black iron. Instead of trying it piece by piece, he doesn't need to do that. From the beginning, he knew the limits of dark steel. Don't forget that in order to upgrade, he had refined many beginner materials. How could he not know the situation of dark steel? Only these geniuses who grew up with a golden spoon in their mouths would not know the situation of dark steel. They needed to slowly explore it. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Tianyun was rapidly refining the materials. A large pile of dark steel was quickly melted into molten iron. Following that, he began to throw materials into it continuously. Due to the speed of his movements, most people could not tell what it was. Of course, even if he could see through it, he couldn't imitate it. Although the rules didn't say that one couldn't plagiarize someone else's work, whoever did so would definitely be fiercely despised. This meant that one's own ability was not good enough, and it was really embarrassing to copy someone else's refining method. The rules were not stated, but the elders would definitely give them low marks. The audience was shocked to see Yi Tianyun throw in the materials so boldly. Aren't they afraid of exploding with such a violent method? This kid's refining method is really rough. Elder Dong Yun shook his head. He could only hope that Yi Tianyun could win this round. Because it was rather rough, the colored glaze region master quickly noticed that Yi Tianyun was the only one who could be as rough as him. It could be said that he was extremely courageous. The materials that he threw in were also extremely rough. The materials that were thrown in were also of a high grade. However, when they were thrown in, they did not explode. Instead, they fused perfectly. Although the compatibility of the materials thrown in with the dark steel is average, they can cancel out the rough effects and fuse with the dark steel with a neutral effect. It seems like he is quite familiar with the control of materials, Colored Glaze Region Master commented from the side. She didn't know how to refine equipment, but that didn't mean she knew nothing. After hosting the God Creation Palace tournament for so many times, if she didn't even know this, she might as well go bang her head against the wall. Yes, it seems like he is quite familiar with the control of the dark steel's materials, Elder Go Huang added. Tell me about his background. Colored Glaze Region Master was a little interested in Yi Tianyun. He came from Fan Yu and joined the first grade God Realm. In the end, he joined our Heavenly Spring God Realm after participating in the God Realm Ascension battle. Elder Go Huang thought for a while and added, It can be said that he climbed up from the bottom of Fan Yu. No wonder he is so familiar with the dark steel. So he is a cultivator from Fan Yu. To be able to climb from a human cultivator from Fan Yu to a Julian Earth monarch, this is really unimaginable. Colored Glaze Region Master nodded. There was no discrimination in her eyes, but instead, there was a little more respect. It was not easy for him to climb up from Fan Yu to such a high level. With such a low starting point, to be able to reach such a level, how could people not be impressed? Following that, Yi Tianyun threw materials again and again. After throwing more than a dozen materials in a row, he stopped throwing materials in. After fusing into one, a ball of liquid floated in the air. Then, he threw the ball of liquid in the air onto the iron plate in front of him. Then, he started hammering the liquid crazily, starting the final refinement. His skillful technique made the audience nod in approval. They felt that it was not bad. At least he would not fall behind the other participants because his cultivation was lower. Very quickly, under his crazy hammering, a long sword was forged. This kind of rough technique was usually used to forge giant swords and axes. Who would have thought that it would be used to forge a long sword this time? It was really surprising. Dang! With one last heavy punch, Yi Tianyun completely forged the long sword. There was no special luster on the surface, and it completely retained the original dark steel. It was simple and unadorned, and everything seemed very low-key. But under this low-key surface, it was actually a lower-grade reincarnation level weapon. To be able to forge a lower-grade reincarnation level weapon with dark steel as the main material, the difficulty of forging was definitely not low. It's done. Yi Tianyun looked up at Colored Glaze Region Master and said, "Colored Glaze Region Master, I have successfully forged it." Everyone was shocked. They thought that Yi Tianyun was just trying it first, and then he would continue to forge a second one to see if he could bring out a higher grade. Who would have thought that he would immediately decide that this weapon would be used for the competition? The elders' hearts sank. They did not expect that Yi Tianyun would be so casual. He was not even willing to try it and directly handed it over. After all, handing it over in advance would not give him any bonus points. It was what it should be. Chapter 1147. Naturally, Yi Tianyun did not choose to be the first to attract attention. It was because he had a deep understanding of meteoric iron. Since that was the case, there was no need to continue trying. No matter how hard he tried, the standard would be the same, unless he used a stronger flame. In his opinion, he had already reached his limit, and it would be difficult for him to improve further. As for what others thought, it was their business. Yi Tianyun felt that he had tried his best. He even felt that others would not be able to surpass his level. In the end, this was the highest standard weapon that could be forged from meteoric iron. Unless the proportion of meteoric iron was reduced, it would be difficult to increase the grade. Only one try? Elder Go Huang frowned slightly. He felt that Yi Tianyun was too careless and not serious enough. Everyone else had been trying, but Yi Tianyun only one try was enough. It was truly puzzling. Once is enough. If one has a deeper understanding of the material, one try is enough. Region Mistress Colored Glaze had a different opinion. At the same time, she gestured for the elders of Godcraft's palace to check. Every mission should be checked immediately. Although there were not many participants, they were all done. Naturally, they were checked first. Following that, the 7 elders gathered around. Elder Dong Yun could not participate in the grading and could only watch from the side. Elder Xiao Tian took the lead and arrived in front of Yi Tianyun. He picked up the long sword and checked it a little, then he flicked it lightly. The whole long sword vibrated slightly. The forging standard is not bad, but the grade is a little low. You spent so many materials to achieve a low-grade rebirth grade weapon? Elder Xiao Tian looked at Yi Tianyun and said indifferently, "I feel that it can be a little higher. It's not the ultimate standard, so I will only give 5 points. We also feel that the grade is a little low. I feel that it can at least reach the level of a middle-grade rebirth grade weapon. Low-grade rebirth grade is too low. I will also give 5 points. The materials and the forging are quite harmonious. The forging technique is passable, but the grade is too low. I will give 5 points. Each of them gave a low score. The highest score was only 6 points, and the lowest was 5 points, which was considered a passing score. Elder Xiao Tian was extremely biased against Yi Tianyun, but he would still give an appropriate score. Liuli Region Master was watching from the side. How could he dare to give a 0 directly? He would definitely be scolded to death. No matter how bad it was impossible to get 0 points, unless it was a failure. Bullshit. At this moment, Elder East Cloud roared furiously from the side. What grade can be even higher? When dark steel is the dominant material, if you want to break through to a higher limit, you don't just need a stronger flame. What's more important is extremely rare materials. Currently, the materials provided were not at the level of being rare. The weapons forged by Heavenly Cloud Earth Monarch could be considered to be at the limit. I'm not satisfied with only 5 points. Elder Dong Yun jumped out at this moment. He was really dissatisfied with this score. Elder Dong Yun, what do you mean by that? Do you think we're not professional enough? Do you think that we can't even determine the limit of profound iron? Elder Xiao Tian said in a deep voice. The other 6 people looked at Elder Dong Yun one after another with dissatisfied expressions. They weren't bribed by Elder Xiao Tian. They were only saying what they wanted to say. That's right. Let me ask you, do you understand profound iron? Elder Dong Yun said sternly, I don't think you've touched it before. Most of the participants here have never touched it before. You simply don't know the limit. I've touched it before. Although I don't have a deep understanding, the level of Heavenly Cloud Earth Monarch's refinement is definitely not low. Elder Xiao Tian and the others were indeed hit where it hurt. They really didn't have a detailed understanding of profound iron. They only had a slight understanding of the situation from observation. For example, they had a rough understanding from Yi Tianyun's refinement. They all felt that it could be a step higher. Are you the one giving the score now, or are we? Elder Xiao Tian retorted coldly. He couldn't be bothered to argue with Elder Dong Yun. He directly pointed out the biggest problem, and that was that the one giving the score wasn't Elder Dong Yun. Elder Dong Yun was momentarily speechless. It wasn't his turn to give the score now. Interrupting was also against the rules. They all looked at Region Lord Glaze, wanting to see what she had to say. Elder Dong Yun, if you want to give an evaluation, you can do so when the next participant comes, Region Lord Glaze said. Region Lord Glaze's words meant that Elder Dong Yun shouldn't interrupt. He could just watch from the side. After all, there were rules. Elder Dong Yun could only remain silent. Elder Xiao Tian had a triumphant expression on his face. He had finally turned the tables here. Yi Tianyun watched coldly from the side. He didn't retort at all. He just stood where he was. Everyone's gazes were filled with mockery. They didn't expect him to be so tragic. He looked very powerful, but he ended up with a low score in the end. Shortly after, Yi Tianyun sat down and meditated. His score had already been evaluated. It was only an average of 5 points. It was simply too low. Sha Sui, Lord of Heaven, and the others in Elder Dong Yun's camp all felt that it was a pity. Why did he get such a low score? It looked like his performance was all right. Why was his score so low? They were all very unhappy, but they could only accept their fate. Along with the mocking gazes, explosions soon occurred one after another, attracting everyone's attention. They failed one after another. It was already good enough that they didn't explode, not to mention succeeding. As time passed, the explosions became fewer and fewer. They were getting more and more comfortable with refining. However, everyone was surprised to find a huge problem. No matter how they refined, the grade was lower than the low-grade rebirth grade. In other words, weapons of Fan Yu's grade could not be upgraded to the high grade that Yi Tianyun had refined. The 7 elders who had given the evaluation before now felt incomparably awkward. Could it be that they were really wrong? More than half of the time had passed. The weapons they refined were getting better and better. However, none of them could reach the low-grade rebirth grade. Along with a sound, someone had successfully refined a low-grade rebirth grade weapon. This gave them hope. However, they were soon disappointed. The participants who had successfully refined a low-grade reincarnation-grade weapon couldn't increase their grade no matter how hard they tried. Again and again, the level of the refinement was still firmly locked at the low-grade reincarnation level. It could not advance to the next level. This was still not bad. Among the 24 participants, only a few had successfully refined low-grade rebirth-grade weapons. Most of them were stuck at Fan Yu's grade. This was an extremely awkward question. Yi Tianyun, who was meditating at the side, didn't need to retort. The score they gave was equivalent to a slap on their faces. Chapter 1148. The duration of the competition was getting shorter and shorter. Currently, there were less than 7 people who could successfully refine a low-grade reincarnation weapon. Yi Tianyun was one of them. Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven was another. Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven had yet to refine a high-grade reincarnation weapon and was still working on it. All of them were sweating profusely. It was several times more difficult than refining a high-grade reincarnation weapon. Most of them were still at the divine artifact level. However, they were not called divine artifacts in the divine realm. Instead, they were called star artifacts and were considered ordinary weapons. All of them were prodigies, but they could not even compare to Yi Tianyun, who had been ridiculed previously. At most, they could only refine a star artifact. Previously, the other participants had looked at Yi Tianyun and felt that Yi Tianyun was very ridiculous. Now, it seemed that they were the ones who were being ridiculed. They did not even have the qualifications to ridicule Yi Tianyun. They were all stuck at the star artifact level and could not refine it no matter how hard they tried. As a result, they were sweating profusely. They did not have high expectations now. They only hoped that they could refine a low-grade reincarnation weapon. That was enough. Ha ha ha, those participants can only refine a star artifact. Little junior brother is not the worst. In fact, he can be said to be the best. That's right. I thought little junior brother had no chance of winning. Now, it seems that little junior brother is very confident. Elder East Cloud revealed a smile at the side. He looked at Elder Xiao Tian with an ugly expression. The highest score they had given was 6 points. This meant that if they were to use this as a grading system, they would not even be able to reach 4 points. They felt extremely embarrassed when they thought of what they had said previously. They had thought that they could refine a higher grade. Who knew that the highest grade they could refine now was the low-grade reincarnation weapon? What mid-grade reincarnation weapon? Elder Xiao Tian gritted his teeth and shouted, "What are you all doing? Hurry up and refine a higher grade weapon for me." He was now urging his disciples to refine a higher grade weapon. However, Shubo Lord of Heaven was sweating profusely. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. This mysterious iron is really trash. It is even worse than a rock. This disciple has already tried his best to refine a higher level one, but I'm still unable to do it. The difficulty is too high. Shubo Lord of Heaven was already at his limit, unless he was given a little more time. However, in such a short amount of time, he really couldn't refine anything of a higher level. Elder Xiao Tian was about to explode from anger. He did not expect the difficulty to be so high. Furthermore, Yi Tianyun had succeeded on the first try. It was obvious that he was more familiar with dark steel. That was why he could forge it so quickly. Damn it, how could this be? Elder Xiao Tian's expression was extremely unsightly, and the other elders weren't any better. This was like slapping their own faces. They could either bite the bullet and continue to beat the score, or they could change the score again. But if he changed the score again, wouldn't that be admitting his mistake? For a moment, many of the elders were thinking about how to answer the question. Elder East Cloud laughed from the side. Let's see what they had to say. They were definitely in a difficult position now. Soon, someone successfully refined it and let the elders grade it. This was already their limit, so they could only let the elders grade it. Elders, how do you grade this weapon? Elder East Cloud looked at them with a face full of sarcasm. Many of the elders had awkward expressions. This was the second person besides Yi Tianyun for them to grade. They wouldn't let the elders grade it until the end. After all, they didn't know how high the grade they could refine until the end. Who knew if they would be able to refine a higher grade weapon in the end and get a higher score? Who knew how to refine it? It was still the same grade. There was no change. This proved that refining weapons with dark steel was really too difficult. It was simply a nightmare. Since it's a star tool, 3 points will be given. Elder Xiao Tian braced himself and gave a score. He did not want to be slapped in the face. He would rather stubbornly insist on a higher grade than give a higher score. His face would be slapped swollen. This was a matter of face. They would never admit it no matter what. Yes, yes, yes. The grade is too low. We will also only give 3 points. All of them chose to lie through their teeth. Face was still more important. They were dignified elders, and there were so many people watching, including the region lord of Glaze region. They couldn't lose face no matter what. 3 points. Elder Dong Yun coldly snorted and said, "Looks like Elder Xiao Tian's standards are really high. It seems that if I want to obtain high points, I'll have to refine dark steel into a high-grade reincarnation grade weapon at the very least. Only then will I be able to obtain 8 or 9 points. Or maybe it has to be at the Heaven Path grade to get full marks." He didn't mind being slapped in the face, especially since Elder Xiao Tian had just refuted him. Now it was his turn to get back at him. Elder Xiao Tian stiffened his neck and said, "That's right. Even if it's dark steel, one can still refine an upper-grade reincarnation grade weapon. We must treat it strictly." "That's amazing. Now, Elder Xiao Tian, why don't you demonstrate and see if you can refine an upper-grade reincarnation grade weapon with these materials?" Elder Eastcloud sneered. They provided the various participants with materials and didn't need to bring their own materials to ensure fairness. If someone were to take out extremely rare materials and throw them in, it would no longer be a competition of strength, but a competition of who had the wealthiest family background. Elder Xiao Tian's face darkened. Although he knew that he was rather capable, seeing the current situation, he knew that even the cleverest housewife couldn't cook a meal without rice. Without better materials, it was impossible to refine a high-grade weapon. Unless it was an extremely heaven-defying technique, such as triggering a heaven tribulation to refine the weapon, it was no longer within their scope. Speechless, right? You can't even refine it yourself, yet you give such a score. What a joke. Elder Eastcloud swung his hand and retorted without holding back. It was as though he was trying to beat them to death. It was as though Elder Xiao Tian had killed his father, and his words were extremely vicious. It wasn't that Elder Eastcloud had a vicious mouth, but that Elder Xiao Tian was the first to be heartless. Therefore, he couldn't be blamed for being unjust. "Elder Xiao Tian, is there such a thing?" Region Lord Glaze looked at them with interest. The Go Huang elders by the side shook their heads. How could they not know the internal situation of the God's Forging Palace? The relationship was extremely chaotic, and it was time to rectify it. However, they weren't too sure how to rectify it. "No, it's not like that. I feel that I can at least refine a middle-grade reincarnation grade weapon. That's why I gave such a score." Elder Xiao Tian's tone softened. A difference of 5 points between a middle-grade and a lower-grade weapon. This score is really strict. Elder Eastcloud snorted. From his point of view, even if he could refine a middle-grade weapon, he would at least give a score of 7, not 5. Chapter 1149. Elder Dong Yun's sarcasm made Elder Xiao Tian's expression turn uglier and uglier, but he could not retort. As long as one was not a fool, one could see the problem. Everything could be attributed to one point, which was that they had been too rash and overestimated the extreme effects of the meteoric iron. Although they were elders, it did not mean that they could see the limit every time. They had to refine it a little to know its general abilities. Yi Tianyun had refined it before, and with the appraisal eye, there was no need to continue testing. Just one time was enough, and not too many were needed. Elder Dong Yun, the difference between inferior grade and intermediate grade is like the difference between heaven and earth. It's normal to give low scores. We are all using this as the standard now, and we are not biased. Elder Xiao Tian stubbornly retorted. He would not back down and say that he had judged wrongly. If that's the case, then that's about it. Elder Go Huang persuaded from the side. He knew that there would be no result if they continued arguing, so he could only stand up and say a few words. Since Elder Go Huang has said so, then I have nothing else to say. You can rate well then. Elder Dong Yun swung his sleeves and snorted coldly, still feeling very displeased. Following Elder Xiao Tian, they could only bite the bullet and give low scores one after the other. In the end, some people only got 2 points, which was even more miserable and pitiful. Although everyone gave their scores this way, it seemed that the scores were really embarrassing. To outsiders, this group of people were all trash. The highest score was only 5 or 6, and there were not even 8 or 9. Were the geniuses of the God Creation Palace all handicapped geniuses? Internally, they knew the reason, but they were just unwilling to say it. This batch of contestants is really bad. They can't even reach more than half of the elders' requirements. That's right. I don't know if their talent is too bad, or if their teaching is too bad, but their scores are so low. That's right. They are much worse than before. They didn't even refine the results the elders wanted. In an instant, everyone started discussing. The discussions of the Spear Palace and the other god palaces were so noisy that they could hear them. Each word was worse than the last, making Elder Xiao Tian and the rest feel ashamed. They wanted to dig a hole and hide in it. But if he said it, he had to keep it to himself even if he had to kneel. Soon, the scores were all evaluated. Yi Tianyun was the one with the highest score, tied with the others. Since he was the first to make it, everyone had a whole new level of respect for him. Even the glazed region master took a second look at him. She had some expectations for him. Region Lord Valurium, the scores have been evaluated. Elder Xiao Tian and the others stood in front of Region Lord Valurium with their heads lowered. Only Elder Dong Yun raised his head. Elder East Cloud had a clear conscience and knew the situation. Naturally, he was not afraid to look glazed Region Lord in the eye. Yes, the performance of the contestants this time is not bad. Most of the contestants have never touched dark steel before, but they are still able to forge such a good weapon. They are still very outstanding. Area Master Colored Glaze didn't say anything wrong about the elders. Instead, he praised the contestants. Although Lioli Region Lord was not a professional, she still knew the situation. There was no need to talk about the scheming of the elders, but in his opinion, the performance of these participants was still worthy of recognition. That's for sure. Our disciples are all very outstanding, Elder Xiao Tian hurriedly said. Elder Xiao Tian hurriedly said. If his disciples performed poorly and made the glazed region lord unhappy, then they would definitely have to bear the consequences. I am naturally aware of this. All of your performances are not bad. I won't say anything else. Area Lord Valurium had some ability, but some things couldn't be too forceful. Moreover, Elder Go Huang and the others would handle it. She didn't need to do everything herself. If she did everything herself, why would she need Elder Go Huang and the others? Although they were all called elders, there were only a few of them who were truly of high rank. Among them, Elder Go Huang was the highest. He could be called by his full name, or as the Great Elder. As the Great Elder, he could be said to be the most powerful existence under the Region Lord Valurium. Who would dare to disobey him? Following that, all the elders nodded and didn't say anything else. Now that things had come to this, what else could they say? Shortly after, they all returned to their respective camps and prepared to proceed to the next round. This round didn't create a particularly large gap. The main reason was that the score was too low. Otherwise, Yi Tianyun would definitely be able to create a huge gap. Yi Tianyun didn't have any complaints. These things weren't something he could control. He just needed to do his own assessment on the side. This time, Lord Tianyun's performance was not bad. It could be said that he let me vent my anger. Elder Dong Yun thought of how Elder Xiao Tian had suffered a setback just now and felt very satisfied. That's right. Little junior brother's understanding of mysterious iron is quite deep. He was able to forge it in such a short time. I tried many times before I could barely reach the level of low-grade reincarnation grade. Flaming Lotus Lord of Heaven shook his head. He really wiped off his cold sweat for almost falling behind. That's right. The difficulty was really high. I almost couldn't complete it. Yulong Lord of Heaven nodded his head and wiped off his sweat. I almost couldn't complete it. I needed to study for a long time at the beginning. I was just lucky. I encountered a problem that I've seen before. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have been able to complete it. Yi Tianyun smiled modestly. Luck is also a type of strength. This is called being experienced and knowledgeable. Elder Dong Yun smiled. Mph, I heard that you came from Fan Yu. No wonder you are so familiar with Fan Yu's materials. Experienced and knowledgeable? What's so great about some low-grade materials? Elder Xiao Tian mocked from the side. Since their camps were closer, Elder Xiao Tian naturally heard their conversation. He couldn't help but mock them from the side. Are you talking about Region Lord Valurium's problem? Elder Dong Yun snorted coldly and threw out a sentence to shut Elder Xiao Tian up. Elder Xiao Tian was speechless. If he continued, it would be tantamount to saying that the colored glaze region lord was at fault. At that time, he really wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. I can't be bothered to argue with you. Let's see how the next round goes. Elder Xiao Tian looked at Yi Tianyun and sneered. I hope your luck is so good in every round that you encounter Fan Yu's materials. After Elder Xiao Tian left, they all felt extremely displeased. Little junior brother, don't mind that guy's words. You can still take the lead in the next round. Flaming Lotus Lord of Heaven said. I will. Yi Tianyun of course didn't care about Elder Xiao Tian's words. He never cared about these people. They were all jealous people. Why should he care about them? Chapter 1150. The first round of the competition was finally over. Many people were very interested in the second round of the Glaze Region Master. They didn't know what kind of questions the Region Master would give. In the eyes of the audience, the more abnormal the better. It was to make the competition more interesting. Especially in the first round, a black iron made everyone refine and explode. It was an extremely rare thing to see normally, but it made these geniuses feel embarrassed. It proved that there was always someone better and they still had a lot to learn. Otherwise, they would refine and explode like before. This was based on the fact that the materials were relatively common. If the materials were rare, the refining failure would represent a great loss. Therefore, eyesight was especially important. They must not make a mistake, otherwise, it would be a failure. If they failed, it would be fine. They were afraid that a serious explosion would directly blow them away. At that time, not only would the weapon be damaged, but the person would also have to recuperate for a long time. The first round of the competition is over. All the contestants are very outstanding and did not disappoint my expectations. I believe that everyone has seen that they failed many times, but in a short time, they still refined a good weapon. I believe that if they were given a little more time, they would be able to refine a better grade. In this round, I am testing the contestants' adaptability and familiarity with the materials. Everyone may think that they failed many times, but in fact, their performance has exceeded my expectations. Therefore, everyone should not feel that they have failed. In fact, relatively speaking, their performance is already very good. The Region Master did not directly scold them, but praised them. She did not think that the contestants' ability was poor, but rather, they were not bad. Then, let's start the second round of the competition. I believe that everyone has been waiting for a long time. The words of the Region Master made the hearts of many contestants jump. Finally, the second round was coming. Many people wanted to make a comeback in the second round. The score difference was too small. If they did not pull away, it would be difficult to fight into the top three. The top three were the highest honor and could enjoy good rewards. The audience was even more excited. They felt that a good show was coming. The Region Master's questions were often unexpected, which made it interesting. In this round, I will let you refine pills. The Region Master said. Refine pills? Many of the contestants were dumbfounded, wondering if they had heard wrong. It was actually alchemy. Region Lord Colored Glaze, this round is alchemy? The contestant in the front row braced himself and asked. The other elders suspected that they had heard wrongly. They were from the Palace of Gods, and they specialized in forging weapons. Why were they refining pills? Although the two were both refined using flames, there was a huge difference between them. They weren't even on the same level. That's right. Did Lord Azure Glaze make a mistake with the question? Elder Go Huang stood up and asked. They wondered if they had heard wrongly. There were people from the Alchemy Palace among the audience. When they heard the question, they were dumbfounded. Was this a question for them? Very quickly, the Glazed Region Lord shook his head and said, "There's no mistake, it's refining pills. This alchemy doesn't require you to refine a high-grade pill. It just wants to see what grade of pill you can refine. These are the materials. With your abilities, you can refine as high a grade as you want. Everything will be judged by the grade of the pill you refine." A large pile of materials had already been prepared by the side. Basically, the materials for Fan Yu grade pills to God-level pills were placed there for the contestants to choose from. However, they didn't give out any precious materials. After all, they were all disciples of the Palace of Gods, and their ability to refine pills was basically zero. All along, those who could forge basically didn't know how to refine pills. Those who could refine pills basically didn't know how to refine weapons. When they said that they didn't know how to refine pills, it didn't mean that they didn't know how to refine at all. It was just that they only knew a part of it, and not particularly deep. The two were not on the same level. Being able to cultivate one of them to a decent level was already very good. As for cultivating both to an extremely high level, the amount of effort needed was astonishing. It was difficult for most people to reach this step. Of course, not being able to reach this step didn't mean that they didn't have it. In the end, there were still a few people who could reach this step. The Glazed Region Lord was now trying to unearth their potential and see if one of them could produce a super genius who could refine 2 items. It's over. I basically don't know how to refine pills. I know a little about the easier ones, but I don't know anything about the more difficult ones. Yulong Lord of Heaven was on the verge of crying. Who knew that there would be such an insane question? It was an insane question that had never appeared before. I know a little, but not a lot. Flaming Lotus Lord of Heaven was also frowning. Not only the two of them, but the others were also frowning. They put all their energy into forging weapons. How would they have extra energy to spend on refining pills? Therefore, when they heard this question, they all suspected that they had heard wrongly, or that the Glazed Region Lord had made a mistake with the question. As it turned out, there was no mistake with the question. Yi Tianyun was on the verge of laughing out loud. There was nothing to be tested on, but they actually tested on refining pills. Although his level of refining pills was not very high, he was definitely much higher than all the participants present. That's right, he was a whole lot taller than them, leaving them several streets behind. It could be said that they were too far behind to catch up. The Glazed Region Lord did not make a mistake with the question. The mistake was that she thought that she could test the participants ruthlessly, but in reality, she was giving Yi Tianyun a great opportunity to surpass them. The second round has a higher limit of 20 points. This means that the higher the grade you obtain, the higher the points. This way, you will be able to widen the gap. As for the judges, they will be judged by the elders of the Elixir Refinery Palace. The Glazed Region Lord's words were final. The other elders did not know whether to laugh or cry, but they had no other choice. The elders of the Elixir Refinery Palace joined in one after another. It was originally a special event for the Temple of Gods, but now, even the Elixir Refinery Palace joined in. Originally, the Elixir Refinery Palace and the Temple of Gods were like fire and water. The reason was simple, they were fighting for people. Both of them were similar in nature. They both needed to possess decent flames to be able to join. Therefore, those who possessed decent flames would request to join. Now that they had joined the battle, the elders of both parties were hostile toward each other. They were not on good terms with each other. Initially, the elders of the Temple of Gods were hostile toward each other. Now, they united and faced off against the elders of the Elixir Refinery Palace. Chapter 1151. Lioli Region Ruler, we will definitely do a good job. The elders of the Alchemy Palace spoke one after another. However, there weren't many elders here, only 3. It wasn't that there were too few elders in the Alchemy Palace. Rather, there wasn't a need for so many of them. 3 of them would be enough. For the sake of fairness, the God Creation Palace required everyone to score. On the other hand, the Alchemy Palace was different. They were completely an outsider, and the grading was absolutely fair. Thus, they did not need too many people. Then I'll leave it to the elders of the Alchemy Palace, Region Lord Colored Glaze said with a faint smile. When the Alchemy Palace elder turned to look at Elder Dongyun and the others, his eyes flickered with disdain. I didn't think that we would be grading your disciples here. Let us see how many alchemy grandmasters have been held back by artifact forging. The one who spoke was Elder Wu Yuan, the head elder of the Alchemy Palace. His position was extremely high. Even though he couldn't match up to Elder Go Huang and the others, he was already very close. Judging from the current situation, it wouldn't be long before he could truly reach the level of Elder Go Huang. An alchemy grandmaster who was delayed by refining? I think you're just an artifact refinement grandmaster who's been held back by alchemy. Elder Dong Yun harumphed coldly and immediately pointed the spearhead at Elder Wu Yuan, not holding back in the slightest. That's right. Some geniuses should have joined the Palace of Gods. Refining equipment would allow them to unleash their full potential, yet they chose to join the Alchemy Palace. Elder Xiao Tian chimed in from the side. For a moment, the two of them were actually on the same side. TMPH, let's see how your disciples are doing. You've basically forgotten about your alchemy abilities. Elder Wu Yuan smiled and said, I wonder if we can still refine high-grade pills. Who knows, we might not even be able to refine high-grade pills like Fan use, right? If you can't refine it, then so be it. We all specialize in refining tools. If you have the ability, then let your disciple refine a reincarnation-grade weapon. Elder Dong Yun retorted fiercely. Elder Wu Yuan was at a loss for words. There was really no way he could forge a weapon. Just like them, he had basically forgotten all about it. It was not advisable to be half-hearted, so he had basically forgotten everything he had learned. Now, it's the Region Lord Lioli who came up with the questions. If you have the ability, go and argue with her. Elder Wu Yuan retorted with a sneer. He suddenly remembered that this was a question set by the Region Lord of the Colored Glaze region. In that case, he would handle this matter accordingly. They were helpless and could only see if their disciple could get a high score. While they were bickering, the disciples had already made their preparations. In their minds, they were constantly recalling the pill refinement method. At the same time, they read the pill recipes provided around them. It was as if they were preparing for an exam. They were cramming at the last minute and kept reading the pill recipes. Only Yi Tianyun is very calm, he doesn't need to look at anything, he just wait for the start of the competition. Little junior brother, don't you want to take a look at the recipe? Heavenly Lord Fire Lotus asked. I happen to know a little about alchemy, so I don't need to look at the pill recipe. Yi Tianyun said with a smile. Even if you know a little, you still have to practice. Otherwise, you will be at a disadvantage, Fire Lotus Heavenly Lord said hurriedly. There's really no need for that. I still have some confidence. Yi Tianyun smiled lightly and said, even if you see the pill recipe, it won't help you much, you still need to build your own foundation. Alright, I'll go take a look. Master Li Tianyang Lord wasn't good at this, so he had to look at the XT. So many geniuses went to look, but Yi Tianyun didn't. This situation soon attracted people's attention. They all looked over, which made Yi Tianyun feel a little hurt. Looks like I have to pretend. Yi Tianyun shook his head. He finally chose to go to the bookshelf and look for some XT. He didn't want to read, but there were too many people looking at him, so he could only do so. Although he had to be high profile, he didn't want to be stared at like a rare beast. Region Master Lioli didn't give them a long time, 3 days at most. After 3 days, the competition would begin. 3 days was enough for them to read a lot of XT books and understand a lot of content. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. One by one, they returned to their original positions. Some of them brought the XT book with them. This didn't violate the rules. Region Master Lioli only gave them 3 days to read, but it didn't mean they couldn't read after 3 days. After 3 days, they could read as they pleased. However, the time for XT was included, so it depended on their confidence. Since you focus on smithing and don't have enough experience in XD, I'll give you more time. The time is 1 month. After 1 month, only the XD with the highest grade will be chosen for evaluation. Elder Wu Yuan stood up and announced the rules. After looking at the contestants, he said in a deep voice, "Now, the competition officially begins." As soon as he said that, the contestants immediately began to XT. They had to start from all aspects, so it would take more time. Soon, they were all immersed in XD immediately. Some of them began to XD very skillfully. Their technique was not simple, and they seemed to be quite familiar with it. They could easily refine a Fan Yu grade 7 XT without any difficulty. The one who did this was Lord of Heaven Shu Bo. It was unexpected that he had some ability in XD. "Unfortunately, I know how to refine pills." The bookworm Heavenly Monarch laughed heartily. He was extremely happy. Not only him, but the other contestants also refined XD of a higher grade. However, they were all Fan Yu grade, not God Realm grade. This wasn't their specialty, but it was already quite good to be able to refine XD of this level. Most of the contestants had a bitter look on their faces, feeling like they wanted to die. Their smithing ability seemed to be useless here. First, they refined the most common dark steel, followed by XT. To them, they just wanted to have a normal competition of refining weapons. They really didn't understand anything else. Only the region lord of colored glaze could come up with such a strange topic. "Elder Eastcloud, didn't you say that your disciple is experienced and knowledgeable? What about now?" Elder Xiao Tian said proudly from the side, "Our Lord of Heaven is truly knowledgeable and has outstanding abilities. Not only was he skilled in smithing, he was also skilled in alchemy. Among the 3 people you sent out, which one of them is better at alchemy?" They had only been united for a short while, but they were already showing off to each other. Elder Dong Yun's heart sank. He was very clear about the standards of the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven and the Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven. They definitely didn't have a high standard in alchemy. As for Yi Tianyun, he wasn't sure. Chapter 1152. Elder East Cloud had some expectations for Yi Tianyun. However, whether or not Yi Tianyun would be able to respond to his expectations was another matter. At the very least, he knew that with Flaming Lotus Lord of Heaven and Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven's abilities, it was impossible for them to refine high-quality pills. Compared to Shu Bo Lord of Heaven, there was a huge gap. He was afraid that he would not be able to catch up. In particular, other than Elder Xiao Tian, the other opponents also had their own strong points, and all of them could refine pills of a higher grade. However, Elder Xiao Tian was the happiest. He felt that this round was prepared for them. They could easily get a high score. "Shu Bo Lord of Heaven, it seems that we have won this round." Elder Xiao Tian felt gratified. Although this question was a little strange, they had someone who could refine high-quality pills. It was a huge advantage for them. "That's for sure. I don't think anyone can refine pills better than me in this round." Shu Bo Lord of Heaven was extremely proud. He felt that the championship was already his. Among so many competitors, he could refine the highest grade pills. He could continue to raise it later. At that time, he would be even more ahead of the others. They also looked over at Yi Tianyun. Before, Yi Tianyun was in the lead. What about now? Yi Tianyun stood there motionlessly, as if he had become stupid. "Elder East Cloud, what's wrong with your disciple? Isn't he experienced and knowledgeable?" "No, being experienced and knowledgeable doesn't mean that he is more capable." Elder Xiao Tian laughed loudly. He felt that Shu Bo Lord of Heaven was even more capable. Elder East Cloud did not say a word. He could not refute this point. Damn it, this Elder Xiao Tian is really arrogant. If we were to compete in refining, I would definitely not lose. Flaming Lotus Lord of Heaven clenched his teeth. He felt that the Glaze Region Lord's question was too abnormal. It was not fair at all. That's right. If we were to compete in equipment forging, we would definitely beat them to a pulp. Yulong Lord of Heaven gritted his teeth. He was also very unhappy. This caused many participants to feel dissatisfied with the Region Lord, but they didn't dare to say anything. If anyone dared to say anything, they wouldn't just be locked in the reflection tower, they would be killed on the spot. How could he not die if he cursed a region master? Moreover, it wasn't just a simple execution, but a capital punishment. Just as the two of them were feeling very unhappy, a flash of flame suddenly shot up into the sky. Boom! A pillar of fire soared into the sky, followed by a flaming lotus that gently floated at the side, surrounding the furnace. It seemed that some kind of rare treasure had been born. At that moment, everyone's attention was focused on it. They realized that the source of the fire was none other than Yi Tianyun's. Such a shocking pillar of fire caused many people to be stunned, especially the disciples of the alchemy palace. They were all dumbfounded when they saw it. This is an elixir pill from the God realm. It looks like it's at least a grade 2 elixir pill. Am I seeing a ghost? A disciple of the God realm refined a grade 2 elixir pill? Quick, pinch me. It hurts. Damn it, it really is a grade 2 elixir pill from the God realm. It looks like he's very familiar with the technique. He's definitely a God alchemy master. Each and every disciple of the alchemy palace suspected that their eyes were playing tricks on them. It could be said that the level that Yi Tianyun displayed was even higher than theirs. A grade 2 God alchemy master might not be considered very strong in the alchemy palace, but he was at least considered average among the newcomers. The problem was that Yi Tianyun was a disciple of the God realm palace, not the alchemy palace. The two of them weren't on the same level. Now that Yi Tianyun was able to refine such a powerful elixir pill, many of the spectators and elders started to doubt whether Yi Tianyun was an alchemy master. However, after seeing Yi Tianyun's refining skills, they felt that he was a pretty good God alchemy master. Now that both of them were very strong, it meant that he cultivated two different abilities and crushed everyone present. This is the aura of a grade 2 elixir pill from the God realm. Elder Dong Yun took a deep breath. He was still hoping for a miracle from Yi Tianyun. Now, a miracle really happened. A grade 2 elixir pill from the God realm shocked everyone present. A grade 2 elixir pill from the God realm wasn't rare. What was rare was the ability to cultivate both. Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, some of the participants failed their refinement and exploded in the furnace. They were frightened by the elixir pill refined by Yi Tianyun to the point that they failed. This scene was too shocking. This could be said to be the best. Even the more powerful Lord of Heaven, Shu Bo, was left in the dust. This is impossible. How can he be a God alchemy master? Elder Xiao Tian felt that he was going crazy and was about to go crazy. Lord of Heaven, Shu Bo, was stupefied. His previous pride and confidence were instantly shattered by Yi Tianyun. Not even a speck was left. Interesting. This kid is also a God alchemy master. This is a little out of my expectations. Region Lord Colored Glaze's eyes lit up. She took another look at Yi Tianyun. Not only is he a God alchemy master, but he is also a God alchemy master. I even suspect that he has reincarnated. I don't think he has reincarnated. Otherwise, he wouldn't be staying in the Fan Yu. Elder Go Huang shook his head and denied it. If one was reincarnated, they would choose a place. After they were born, someone would immediately go over to receive them. Then, they would be nurtured with the most abundant resources and strive to nurture them as quickly as possible. They would awaken their memories in the shortest time possible. Therefore, those who could reincarnate usually had a certain status and background. I can feel that there is indeed no aura of reincarnation. But if that's the case, to be able to teach such a powerful disciple, I wonder what kind of master he is. Region Lord Colored Glaze smiled faintly. Looks like this competition is indeed a little interesting, more interesting than the previous ones. These questions I came up with really hit the mark by a stroke of luck, digging out some geniuses. That's. Elder Go Huang's face twitched. He suspected that these questions were set by Region Lord Colored Glaze based on his mood. As for how the questions were set, he was too embarrassed to ask. Yi Tianyun ignored the gazes around him. He quickly gathered the medicinal pellet in the furnace and pulled it out. An incomparably smooth and round medicinal pellet floated down from the air, landing on his palm. It's done, a grade 2 God realm medicinal pellet. Yi Tianyun opened his palm. An astonishing grade 2 God realm medicinal pellet appeared in front of everyone's eyes. There was no need to refine too many times. A single grade 2 God Realm medicinal pellet was enough to show disdain for all heroes. Chapter 1153. Yi Tianyun's performance had shocked them. Especially Elder Wu Yuan, who felt that Yi Tianyun had been held up. Now that he was able to reach such a high standard in 2 professions, what if he focused on one? He might be able to reach an even higher standard, but he was now a disciple of the God Forging Palace, which made Elder Wu Yuan feel that it was a pity. Hold up my ass. I was the one who said refining elixir pills would be held up. Elder Dong Yun scolded with a smile after he regained his senses. There was no hint of dissatisfaction on his face. Instead, he was so happy that he was about to go crazy. He never expected Yi Tianyun to be a divine alchemy master, which was beyond his expectations. Damn it, kid, if you join my elixir refinement palace, I promise to nurture you with all my might. Elder Wu Yuan took a few steps to stand in front of Yi Tianyun and tried to headhunt him in front of so many people. Elder Wu Yuan, you are really thick-skinned to try to headhunt someone in front of me. Elder Dong Yun also walked over and glared at him fiercely. So what if I'm headhunting you? It's a waste to stay in the God Forging Palace. Elder Wu Yuan was just that thick-skinned. He felt that Yi Tianyun was not bad and wanted to headhunt him immediately. I feel that it would be a waste if he really joined the Elixir Refinement Palace, Elder Dong Yun retorted. The two of them quarreled continuously in front of everyone like 2 kids. Everyone else looked at each other, especially the participants, who were treated like air and left to the side. However, it was no wonder. The standard that Yi Tianyun had displayed far exceeded the other participants. The other participants had at most refined Fan Yu at grade 7 or 8. Compared to grade 1 or 2 in the God Realm, they were worlds apart. They were naturally given the cold shoulder. Elder Wu Yuan didn't even look at them. Unless they displayed a standard that was similar to Yi Tianyun's or higher, he wouldn't bother with them. The current situation was awkward. Yi Tianyun was the star of the show, while the others were reduced to supporting characters. They couldn't even be compared to him. Cough cough, elders, please stop quarreling. It's time to start the scoring. Let's focus on the God Forging Palace's test. Elder Go Huang stood up and advised the two of them to stop arguing. With so many people watching, it was really embarrassing. Only then did the two of them stop arguing. Elder Wu Yuan walked up to Yi Tianyun, and without even glancing at the pill, he said, full score, 20 point. He didn't even take the pill to check and directly gave a score of 20 points, which was shocking. Elder Wu Yuan, 20 points just like that. Elder Xiao Tian exclaimed. In that case, I wonder how many points Elder Xiao Tian thinks should be given. Elder Wu Yuan looked around and said indifferently, Lord Liu Li, give him a full score of 20 points. His current results are very outstanding, even better than the outstanding disciples of our alchemy palace. If this isn't enough to get full marks, then what will? Originally, the Region Lord Colored Glaze did not expect the disciples of the Hall of Gods to be able to refine good elixirs when he set this topic. He directly refined something that even our Alchemy Palace disciples can't compare to. How can he not get full marks? Elder Wu Yuan's explanation was clear and logical. He didn't give random scores and was completely reasonable. Even the disciples of the Alchemy Palace were defeated. If this wasn't full marks, then what would be? If it was according to the standards of the Alchemy Palace, this naturally wouldn't be able to get full marks. But now that it was decided according to the standards of the Hall of Gods, it would definitely be different. Alright then. Elder Xiao Tian could only agree. This way, he would get full marks and instantly widen the gap between him and Yi Tianyun. Now, he could only hope that Shu Bo, the Lord of Heaven, would be able to obtain an elixir of a higher grade to close the gap between them. Sigh, Elder Xiao Tian, this disciple of mine is too knowledgeable. Not only is he knowledgeable, but he is also more capable. I'm really sorry. Elder Dong Yun flashed over and couldn't help but mock. Elder Xiao Tian's expression turned ugly. Truly, one had to pay for what they did. He originally thought that he would be able to suppress Elder Dong Yun in this round, but who knew that he would be easily surpassed? The third round is the true test of standard. Elder Xiao Tian waved his hand and couldn't be bothered to argue with Elder Dongyun. Elder Dongyun smiled. This fellow was really stubborn and refused to admit defeat. Soon, all of them finished refining elixirs. Their standards were different, and the difference was huge. It wouldn't be like the first round. Although there was a difference, it wouldn't be as huge. After all, some only liked to refine equipment and didn't like refining elixirs at all. They basically had zero foundation. With this kind of zero foundation, how could he possibly achieve good results? It would already be very good if he could refine a mortal realm grade 3 or grade 4 spirit beast. Time passed in the blink of an eye, and soon, it was time for the final scoring. Shu Bo, the Lord of Heaven, tried his best to refine, but he could only refine a 4th grade Fan Yu elixir and couldn't advance any further. It wasn't something that could be refined just because one wanted to. One needed a stronger foundation to be able to refine it. Hence, his final result was only the 8th grade Fan Yu elixir. The rest of the highest grades were similar to him, all of them at the 8th grade Fan Yu elixir. The lowest grade elixir was still 3rd grade or 4th grade. For these beginners, it was already a pretty good result. However, compared to the elixirs refined by Yi Tianyun, they were no different from trash. In terms of scores, the difference between the two was like heaven and earth. The lowest score was 3 or 4 points, and the highest score, other than Yi Tianyun's 20 points, was around 11 or 12 points. In this round, Yi Tianyun pulled away from the second place by 8 points, which was equivalent to the result of the first round twice. This made many of the participants' expressions turn uglier and uglier. These questions were simply at the level of a scam. If they couldn't display their refining skills, how could they compete? After the second round ended, all of them stood in their groups, their faces full of displeasure. Yi Tianyun's side could be said to be flushed with success, while Elder Dongyun was grinning from ear to ear. Flaming Lotus Lord of Heaven and the rest were full of praises. They didn't expect Yi Tianyun to have such shocking refining skills. Little junior brother, your refining skills are so strong. No wonder you weren't willing to look at the elixir recipes. Flaming Lotus Lord of Heaven looked at him and smiled. Since you know how to refine elixirs, you can't decline when I ask you to refine elixirs in the future. That's right. This saves me the trouble of looking for disciples from the Alchemy Palace to refine elixirs. I can save a lot of money. Yulong Lord of Heaven and the rest surrounded him, as if they had found a treasure, and kept praising him. Cough cough, there's no need to say these things for now. Lord Tianyun, how did you cultivate to be able to refine elixirs to such a high level? Elder Dongyun asked. Well, I was a little interested, so I cultivated a little and became like this. Yi Tianyun spread his hands helplessly. This was not nonsense, it was indeed an interest. Chapter 1154. After the end of the second round, everyone was full of complaints. Although they didn't say it out loud, it was obvious from their expressions that they were extremely dissatisfied. Glazed Region Lord smiled faintly. It seemed that this situation was within her expectations. No matter who it was, they would be dissatisfied with this. It was supposed to be a competition in the Temple of Gods, so why did the ability to refine elixirs appear out of nowhere? This was puzzling, and no one knew what Region Lord Glaze was thinking to choose such an assessment method. I know everyone is very dissatisfied. Why did the Temple of Gods competition include the content of the Elixir Refinement Palace? Region Lord Glaze glanced at everyone and smiled faintly. I just wanted to see your abilities in this aspect. Sometimes, it's important to have a variety of abilities. If you cultivate carefully, you'll realize that there are many similarities between the two, and it'll be easier to cultivate. Some people will feel that if you focus on your abilities, you'll seem mediocre on both sides. After all, being overly comprehensive means being mediocre. That's undeniable, but some people can put more effort into cultivating both. Especially since both have similar similarities, as long as you have an amazing flame, it'll be much easier to refine. After saying so much, I just want to see how many disciples in the Temple of Gods are able to reach the level of cultivating both. Following that, I'll put in more effort to groom them. If someone isn't interested and only wants to focus on one branch, that's also worth praising. I just want to select some disciples to groom so that they can cultivate both. This will be of great help in the future, and one day, they'll be able to combine both. They won't have to worry about not having an elixir refinement master by their side, and they'll be able to refine elixirs to recover. You can't just stay here forever. If you go out to train, you'll definitely encounter such situations. Region Lord Glaze explained a lot, and everyone came to a sudden realization. It turned out that she wanted to groom talents in this aspect and let them master a certain level of elixir refinement. To put it bluntly, in a large-scale battle, divine craftsmen were trash. Weapons were important, but what about after they were made? If they went out to train, they would be surrounded by elixirs. Coincidentally, their injuries were severe, and they couldn't refine elixirs into elixirs. After all, refining weapons couldn't restore their bodies, and their lives were the most important. Region Lord Glaze wanted to increase their survivability. It was important to be able to create amazing weapons, but when they were forced into a corner, having the ability to refine elixirs was a good choice. After everyone knew about it, their dissatisfaction gradually disappeared. It turned out that this was a disguised way to find a disciple who could dual cultivate. The two of them had a lot in common, so it was not a problem for them to dual cultivate. Everyone's eyes lit up. In that case, there was also value in nurturing them. So that's what Region Ruler Azure Glaze meant. Only then did Elder Go Huang understand the situation. He smiled and said, "This is a good idea. We can train more disciples and make them more knowledgeable." "I agree with this idea," the other elders echoed. It was obvious that the glazed region lord had said this out of the blue. Even they hadn't discussed it before. Yi Tianyun, who was below, narrowed his eyes. To him, the meaning was different. It was very likely that the glazed region master knew about the situation of the Divine Realm War. It was of great significance to them to increase their efforts in nurturing disciples in this aspect. If it affected them, it would be perfect since divine craftsmen could refine pills and forge weapons. As for whether or not an alchemist could also practice weapon refining, there was not much of a need for that. He just had to focus on alchemy. After all, alchemy was important enough. What could be more important than alchemy? Not only could it heal injuries, but it could also increase one's cultivation level. It was very important at all times. Divine craftsmen had a very high status, but it was also very awkward at times. Weapons were needed for combat, but after forging them, it would be rather awkward. The truly practical ones were still alchemists. They just had to focus on alchemy. After the competition, if you are interested, you can report to Elder Wu Yuan and increase your cultivation in this aspect. Region Lord Azure Glaze said, "Of course, the points for the second round will be invalid. It is just to make you feel a little more nervous." Everyone was instantly speechless. They didn't expect that all their efforts would be in vain. Especially Yi Tianyun's 20 points. Didn't that mean that all their efforts were in vain? After Elder Xiao Tian heard this, he was delighted. He looked at Elder Dongyun and smiled. It is really a waste of effort. So what if he is first place? His points are still invalid. Elder Dongyun started to feel unhappy. In the end, he was happy for nothing. Just as they thought that all their efforts were in vain, Region Lord Azure Glaze looked at Yi Tianyun and said with a faint smile, "Although the points will not be counted, Earthly Monarch Tianyun, who is first place, will still receive a reward." Immediately after, Region Lord Azure Glaze flicked his hand, and a cauldron slowly floated down from the sky and landed in his hand. After Yi Tianyun received it, he was surprised to find out that it was a low-grade Heaven Dao alchemy cauldron. It was definitely a very good treasure. "Thank you, Region Lord Azure Glaze." After receiving it, Yi Tianyun hurriedly expressed his gratitude. He thought that all his efforts were in vain. He didn't expect that Region Lord Azure Glaze would gift this cauldron to him, which made all the god alchemists envious. Elder Xiao Tian, who had previously mocked Yi Tianyun for working for nothing, received another ruthless slap in the face. Although the points were not counted, this alchemy cauldron was definitely not bad. In fact, it could even be said to be very good. This is the alchemy cauldron that I used in the past. It is called Flowing Jade Cauldron, and its grade is pretty good. This will be your compensation. As for the other participants, they will also be compensated. When the time comes, Elder Wu Yuan will naturally inform you. Region Lord Azure Glaze didn't give them any rewards, which instantly made them feel very disappointed. When the time comes to seek compensation from Elder Wu Yuan, it would be nothing more than choosing a decent alchemy cauldron or a decent elixir formula. As for people like Yi Tianyun who received a low-grade Heaven Dao alchemy cauldron, they were on a completely different level. This low-grade Heaven Dao alchemy cauldron was something that even the elders of the Palace of Gods could not create. Only the elders with very good standards could create it, and the success rate was very low. This type of treasure had always been extremely difficult to create, and it wasn't that easy to grasp. Of course, Yi Tianyun knew that this was a good item, and a very good one at that. It would be of great help to him in alchemy. The others were even more envious. For things like alchemy cauldrons, the longer they were used, the better the effects would be. For example, the alchemy cauldron that Region Lord Azure Glaze gifted. Although it was only a low-grade Heaven Dao alchemy cauldron, after using it for a long time, its effects could even be compared to a middle-grade Heaven Dao alchemy cauldron. Chapter 1155. After Yi Tianyun received his reward, the participants and elders who thought that he was wasting his effort all shut their mouths obediently. It was really a tragedy that he was immediately pulled back just as he was saying that he was wasting his effort. The second round is over. Let's begin the third round. Liu Li Region Lord did not stop and prepared to announce the content of the third round. After everyone heard this, their hearts jumped and they felt extremely nervous. They were all worried that Liu Li Region Lord would give another abnormal question and make them carve a god's seal or something. That would really be the end of them. Alchemy was still somewhat related, but carving a god's seal was really something to curse at. There was no connection between the two. Alchemy was still related to flames, so how could carving a god's seal be related? There was no connection at all. If there was really something related, then it would be using mental power. Liu Li Region Lord smiled at them and said, "Don't be so nervous. This time, there will not be a question like before, but an official question. This round will be the time for you to display your highest standards. The lowest score is 0, and there is no maximum score. However, there will be stage scores. The elders will mark this point. As long as you are strong enough, you will be able to get a higher score." Everyone's eyes lit up. A test with no upper limit was indeed what they needed. Creating a weapon of the highest level would allow them to get a higher score. As for how they would be graded, it would depend on what the 8 elders said. Let me explain this. The one who stood up was not Elder Dongyun or Elder Xiao Tian, but a seemingly low-key Elder Liang Ji. Although his standards were not the highest, at least his temper was not as bad as theirs. The grading is very simple. The lowest score starts from the rebirth level. Anything below the rebirth level will not be counted. The highest score is refining a treasure, the intermediate is refining a weapon, and the lowest is refining a defensive equipment. The points are 5, 3, and 2 points respectively. Moving up a level, the points will double. As for the other details, there will also be additional points. This can only be evaluated after the treasure is refined. The rules were very simple. If it was refining an intermediate rebirth level treasure, then it would be 10 points. If it was a high-grade treasure, then it would be 20 points. This was a doubling based on the previous level, not the original doubling. Refining treasures was the most difficult, and the further one went, the more difficult it would be. Hence, the points were usually higher. As for what the treasures were, they were naturally alchemy furnaces, divine rune brushes, or some kind of protective treasures. These were all practical treasures. As for battle-type treasures, the points would naturally be lower. These requirements would not be as harsh, so the difficulty of refining them would be much lower. Everyone nodded. They already had some ideas in mind. This is an opportunity. You have to perform well and let the glazed region lord see your shocking abilities. Elder Xiao Tian transmitted his voice to the Lord of Heaven, telling him that he had to give it his all. I understand. Shu Bo, Lord of Heaven's eyes were filled with raging flames. He looked at Yi Tianyun, his heart filled with fighting spirit. He felt that he would definitely not lose this time. This time, they were free to do whatever they wanted, and it wasn't as restrictive as before. Therefore, as long as they were able to refine something of a high standard, they would be able to obtain a higher score. It was the same for the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven's side. It was time to test the grade of their divine craftsmen and where their true limits were. It could be said that they were aiming for a superior grade reincarnation grade treasure, which was the limit for most of them. As for the inferior grade Heaven Dao grade, it was too difficult and could be said to be a heaven-defying grade. The points wouldn't be as simple as doubling. Elder Liangji only mentioned the standard of the reincarnation grade and didn't mention the Heaven Dao grade. In their opinion, none of the disciples present were able to refine a Heaven Dao grade weapon. Although there was no upper limit, there was a limit to one's ability. It would be better if someone could refine a Heaven Dao grade weapon. Junior brother, you are at a disadvantage this time. It is already very good for you to be able to refine a middle grade reincarnation grade treasure steadily. That's right. The previous tests weren't about specialization. The current test is about specialization. If the grade is too low, it will be impossible for you to make a breakthrough. The Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven and the others shook their heads. They knew that Yi Tianyun's standard was very good, but his grade was too low, so the grade he could refine was naturally lower. If Yi Tianyun was given more time, he would definitely surpass them easily. However, Yi Tianyun was still young and needed to go through many tests. Yi Tianyun just smiled casually and didn't say much. Indeed, in their opinion, he was at most a grade 1 divine craftsman. In fact, he could still level up. As long as he wanted to, it wouldn't be a problem for him to rush to grade 3 divine craftsman. Due to the upgraded data, the sin value and proficiency points were interlinked. It could even be interlinked with the crazy point. This way, he could continue to increase his grade. However, it would consume a lot of sin value and proficiency points, but if he really couldn't rush up, he could only do this. After all, he had to go to the water core area to cultivate. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to break through to the 10th refining Earth Monarch level. That was the number 1 Earth Monarch throughout the ages. Who could compare to such an honor? The competition will last for a month. That's enough time for you to forge the weapon you're most proud of. I hope that you can obtain the best results in this round. After Elder Liangji announced, the competition officially began. The materials were still chosen from the side. The elders had prepared a lot of materials, even heavenly path-grade materials. This wasn't a problem. Originally, the God Creation Palace specialized in this area, so there was naturally a lot of materials. After the competition started, one by one, they quickly went to get the materials. Yi Tianyun also went to get the materials. The materials he got at the beginning were materials that could be used to forge high-grade reincarnation grade treasures. As for Heavenly Path grade, the difficulty was on the higher side. It was already very good to be able to forge high-grade reincarnation grade treasures steadily. Anyway, he had a slight lead in the first round. If he could fight his way to the front in this round, he would be able to get into the top 3. His actions naturally attracted everyone's attention. After all, he was too conspicuous and high-profile in the first 2 rounds. Naturally, they would pay attention to his actions. When the elders saw that he was holding high-grade reincarnation grade materials, all of them frowned. Could it be that Yi Tianyun had reached the level of a grade 2 or 3 divine craftsman? But according to his cultivation, he shouldn't be able to break through to grade 2 or 3 so quickly. It would already be very good if he could stabilize as a grade 1 divine craftsman. Especially when he had amazing alchemy skills. If he could become a grade 2 or 3 divine craftsman, wouldn't he be heaven-defying? Upgrade Divine Craftsman Grade. Chapter 1156. Ding, successfully deducted 63 million proficiency points. Due to insufficient proficiency, the corresponding value will be deducted from the sin value. Ding, successfully upgraded to grade 2 Divine Craftsman. Obtained new forging recipe and ability, increase forging success rate. Upgrade again. Ding, successfully deducted 500 million proficiency points. Due to insufficient proficiency, the corresponding value will be deducted from the sin value and crazy value and converted into proficiency points. Ding, successfully upgraded to grade 3 Divine Craftsman. obtained new forging recipe and ability. In one breath, he directly rushed from grade 1 divine craftsman to grade 3 divine craftsman. He immediately caught up with the genius disciples like Fiery Lotus Lord of Heaven and can be said to be on the same level as them. Under the same conditions, refining a high-grade reincarnation rank treasure is not very difficult. Moreover, he has a lot of blessings, so his success rate is much higher than them. After the successful upgrade, Yi Tianyun calmly began to refine. He did not use the holy fire, but the demonic fire. The heaven-burning sacred fire can greatly increase the success rate, but he will not expose it for the time being. Unless he has no other choice, he still intends to keep this trump card. If he cannot expose it, then he will not expose it. Moreover, the 2 demonic fires are enough for him to use to refine this high-grade reincarnation rank treasure. There is no need for the heaven-burning sacred fire. Immediately after, Yi Tianyun quickly began to refine, throwing piles of materials directly into the furnace. It can be said to be an extremely rough refining method. Everyone's eyes widened. Yi Tianyun is so strong. Yi Tianyun ignored their gazes and quickly began to refine. The powerful flame continuously melted the materials and began to refine. His technique left everyone dumbfounded. This level is clearly the ability of a grade 3 divine craftsman, not the ability of a grade 1 divine craftsman. With so many elders watching and some disciples who understand the situation, they immediately saw the knack. Yi Tianyun's technique is very skilled. Who said that he is only a grade 1 divine craftsman? God, isn't he at the level of a grade 3 divine craftsman? Forget about the level of a grade 2 divine pill master. How can he reach the level of a grade 3 divine craftsman? One by one, the elders are going crazy. If both of them can cultivate to this level, how much effort do they have to put in to reach this level? This is because he was delayed by refining pills. If he didn't refine elixirs, I reckon he would have already become a grade 4 divine craftsman. Elder East Cloud lamented, feeling as though he was biting back at Elder Wu Yuan. Elder Wu Yuan's expression is not too good. He also did not expect Yi Tianyun to be so amazing as a divine craftsman. This way, it will be difficult to poach him from the divine crafting palace. This is not good news for him. This little junior brother is really hiding his strength. He didn't even use his full strength earlier. Fire Lotus, Heavenly Monarch and the others shook their heads. They thought that Yi Tianyun was only a first-grade divine craftsman, but it seemed like they were wrong. That's right, but we will not admit defeat. Even if we are in the same camp, we have to compete. Yulong Lord of Heaven laughed. The flames in his hands rose, and he increased the intensity of the flames as he started to refine the materials. Although they were all in the same faction, they wouldn't go easy on their opponents. They would honestly display their strongest strength. In the end, who would be able to obtain victory would depend on their individual abilities. It wasn't possible for them to win first place just because their teammates went easy on their opponents. This is a test for everyone. Therefore, there is no point in going easy on an individual. Giving it your all is the key. It is not just the two of them. The others have also displayed their highest standards. In order to get into the top 3, they are giving it their all. Boom. Following the sound of an explosion, everyone looked over and realized that Shu Bo Lord of Heaven's side had exploded. Just when everyone thought that Shu Bo Lord of Heaven has failed, they took a closer look and realized that Shu Bo Lord of Heaven did not fail. Instead, the materials in the furnace are constantly exploding. With every explosion, a pile of impurities will be refined out. Such a method is extremely terrifying. It is simply a brand new refining method. It is rare to see such a situation. This is an explosive stream. It is a relatively rare method. If you are not careful, even the furnace will be blown up. Now that you mention it, I do recall that this explosive stream is extremely terrifying. It can maximize the effect of the materials. From the looks of it, he is not just simply refining. He is trying to break through to a higher level. Break through to a higher level? Don't tell me he is trying to refine a heaven law weapon. They were all stunned. A grade 3 divine craftsman can refine a heaven law weapon? That is impossible. The success rate is too low. It is basically negligible. Usually, There is only one possibility of failure. He is trying to refine a heaven law weapon? Elder Dong Yun and the others frowned. It is not a good thing to refine something above your level. Elder Xiao Tian sneered. Who said that Shu Bo Lord of Heaven is only a grade 3 divine craftsman? All of you are too naive. He just broke through recently. What? Grade 4 divine craftsman? All the elders were shocked. Isn't it a little too fast for him to reach grade 4 divine craftsman at such a level? Following closely, Shu Bo Lord of Heaven displayed the ability that he should have. The standard of a grade 4 divine craftsman was immediately displayed. Be it in terms of fire control or technique, it was not something that a grade 3 divine craftsman could display. The determination of grade wasn't as straightforward as cultivation. Most of the time, it depended on the technique. To be able to refine a heaven law weapon, one would definitely be a grade 4 divine craftsman. Heavenly Monarch Shu Bo's face was filled with arrogance. This was what he was most proud of. In the previous 2 stages, he wasn't able to display this ability. Right now, he was finally able to display it and make everyone look at him in a different light. He even looked over at Yi Tianyun with a provocative look in his eyes. It was as though he was saying, so what if you won the first and second rounds? The third round is still the main point. Yi Tianyun was expressionless and couldn't be bothered with this guy. He didn't expect to get first place. He just wanted to be in the top 3. In any case, being in the top 3 was enough for him to make a request. There was no need for him to get first place. He observed the situation around him. Most of the weapons were mid-grade reincarnation grade weapons. Some were high-grade reincarnation grade weapons. He only needed to refine high-grade reincarnation grade weapons. With the addition of some special materials, he would be able to get into the top 3. When he was about to choose to keep a low profile, a crisp voice entered his ears. Ding! Successfully accepted the special quest. Take first place in God Creation Palace. Reward, 1x Forging God Stone, 100 million crazy points, 10 million proficiency. At the same time, you will also receive the title of the strongest newcomer king in God Creation Palace. Chapter 1157. Seems like I can't keep a low profile anymore. Yi Tianyun shook his head. He thought that he could enter the top 3 peacefully, and there was no need for him to take first place. Now, it seemed like he had to take first place. With so many good items in front of him, it would be a waste if he didn't take first place. Although it wasn't a compulsory mission, the rare items and titles were great things. How could he give it up? He took a simple look and knew that he couldn't give up. For example, the Forging Divine Stone. Its effect alone was shocking. Forging Divine Stone greatly increases the success rate of forging and increases the effect by 5 times. As expected of the Forging Divine Stone, its effect was truly enticing. It could increase the quality of the materials forged by 5 times. He thought of the heaven and earth god prints from before. Those god prints from before could also increase the quality by several times, but the effect was extremely poor in the god territory. It was just like fan-use materials, which were extremely ordinary in the god territory. The god prints from before naturally wouldn't be suitable now. Hence, he hadn't engraved any god prints on his weapons. Even though he was a god inscriber, he didn't engrave any. If the effect was too ordinary, he might as well change his weapon. Seems like I have to take first place. I have to say that the Temple of Gods is really full of hidden talents. They even have a 4th grade divine craftsman. Yi Tianyun shook his head. He thought that the highest level would be a 3rd grade divine craftsman. Who knew that there would be such a strong one? No wonder Elder Xiao Tian was so confident. With such an amazing disciple, how could he not be confident? As for the disciples of the other elders, they weren't low in rank, but they were still a long way from being a 4th grade divine craftsman. The Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven and the rest only took a glance and continued to forge frantically. They were only slightly surprised before they calmed down and continued. After all, there were 3 spots. Shu Bo Lord of Heaven took one, so they just had to fight for the other 2 spots. Azure Region Lord nodded in satisfaction when she saw Shu Bo Lord of Heaven's situation. There's a 4th grade divine craftsman. It seems like the disciples of the Temple of Gods are of high standard. That's true, that's true. Elder Xiao Tian's ability to groom disciples is worthy of recognition. Elder Go Huang was also very happy to see such a talented disciple appear. As a first elder, he would definitely be happy to see such a talented disciple appear. Looks like he might be the one to get the first place in the third round. It can even be said that he should be the champion. I don't think so. Earth Monarch Tianyun didn't use his full strength. He should still be able to charge forward. Region Master Colored Glaze looked at Yi Tianyun. It can't be. With his cultivation, it's already very shocking that he can reach grade 3 Divine Craftsman. How can he reach grade 4? Elder Go Huang didn't quite believe it. After all, it wasn't that easy to break through to level 4. There was a huge gap between the two. I'm not sure about that. To be able to complete the Heavenly Lord path and climb to the 9th Refinement Earth Monarch realm as a human, I see limitless possibilities. Region Lord Colored Glaze said. Is that so? Elder Go Huang looked at Yi Tianyun and shook his head in the end. If Yi Tianyun was able to display the abilities of a grade 4 Divine Craftsman, it would be really frightening. In fact, it was naturally difficult for Yi Tianyun to break through to grade 4 Divine Craftsman. That would require 1 billion experience points. If he wanted to upgrade to grade 4 Divine Craftsman, he would need to bleed a lot. Just as he was about to increase his efforts, rays of divine light came from the side and descended from the sky, enveloping Shu Bo Lord of Heaven's furnace. Seeing this ray of divine light meant that the weapon he was refining was ready to accept the blessing of the heavenly light. The biggest difference between the heavenly Tao and the reincarnation rank lay in the blessing of the heavenly Tao. However, how much of the heavenly light he could pull down depended on his own ability. If he pulled down too much, it would lead to easy failure and attract the terrifying heaven's tribulation. If he pulled down too little, it would lead to too little heavenly light. As a result, it wouldn't reach the standard and naturally wouldn't be able to reach the heavenly Tao rank. Come down. Heavenly Monarch Bookworm's fingers moved continuously, and the light in his hand kept flying upwards, pulling down the heavenly Tao's divine light. It was like a tug-of-war, dragging the heavenly Tao's divine light down inch by inch. After dragging it down, he slowly dragged the heavenly light into the furnace and into the armor bit by bit, causing the armor inside the furnace to be coated with a layer of faint radiance. Shu Bo Lord of Heaven had just stabilized, so he was naturally very careful. He didn't dare to refine a heavenly Tao rank treasure and could only choose the armor type. It could be said that he lowered the difficulty to the lowest and raised the success rate to the highest. In any case, as long as he successfully refined it, he would be able to look down on everyone. Although there was no score assessment, he would definitely be able to look down on everyone. At least the score was something that a rebirth rank treasure couldn't surpass. Even if the grade of the treasure he refined was of no use, it would still be easily crushed. After dragging down quite a bit of the heavenly light, Shu Bo Lord of Heaven's expression turned grave. Even Elder Xiao Tian's expression was extremely grave. This was the most crucial step. If the last step failed, it would be a complete loss. However, nothing unexpected happened. After controlling the appropriate amount of heavenly light to enter, it was sealed away by Shu Bo Lord of Heaven. Then, it emitted a dazzling radiance and directly shot up into the sky, indicating that a heavenly Tao rank item had descended. Come out. Shu Bo Lord of Heaven waved his hand, and an armor flew out from the furnace and landed in his hand. There were faint colorful patterns on the surface of the armor, showing off its extraordinariness in every aspect. A heavenly Tao rank armor couldn't possibly be bad. Success. Shu Bo Lord of Heaven's back was already drenched in sweat, as if he had just been fished out of the water. Although it wasn't his first time succeeding, the failure rate was extremely high. In order to come out on top, he could only give it his all. Clearly, the heavens had favored him this time and allowed him to succeed. Good. Elder Xiao Tian laughed loudly and turned to Elder Dongyun. Elder Dongyun, I wonder what level your disciple will be able to refine this time? His face was full of pride. He was already very confident. Heavenly Tao-level blacksmiths were very rare in the past. Unless one was extremely skilled, it would be very difficult to succeed. Shu Bo Lord of Heaven succeeded just like that. Even if it was only at the armor level, it was still a great success, enough to be recorded in the history books. Just do it steadily and surely. There's more than one quota. Elder Dong Yun didn't have much hope. How could he not know his disciple's level? Yi Tianyun's level was at the 3rd grade. With such a level, it was really difficult for him to break through to the heavenly Tao rank. Thus, it could only be considered a disappointment. Chapter 1158. Yi Tianyun was a grade 3, and no one believed that he could create another miracle. Once was enough of a miracle, and there wouldn't be a second time. Elder Xiao Tian glanced at Yi Tianyun, then at Elder East Cloud, and said with a proud smile, "Come to think of it, his ability is at most a grade 3, and there's no way he can surpass it. With your standards, that's all you can do." This time, he could finally heave a sigh of relief. It was very important for them to secure the champion's position. Although the top 3 would be rewarded, what could be more dazzling than the champion? No matter what, most of the elders were like Elder East Cloud and had lost the confidence to get the first place. Which disciple of theirs could surpass the heavenly Tao grade armor? It could be said that no one could surpass it, especially if one wanted to succeed. They needed some luck. Luck played a huge part in Shu Bo's success in refining the Lord of Heaven. It was something that barely reached the rank of a grade 4 divine craftsman and couldn't be considered as a true grade 4 divine craftsman. Because he could successfully refine it, he was already considered a grade 4 divine craftsman. Normally, Shu Bo's success rate for refining the Lord of Heaven would only be 20% to 30%, but he still succeeded. This was luck. Fortunately, he succeeded. If he failed, he would have to start all over again. Not only would he waste a lot of time, but he would also consume a lot of energy. However, it didn't matter if it was due to luck or not. As long as he succeeded, he would be the king of victory. Look, what is that human kid doing? It seems like he is continuously adding new materials. That's true. The materials that look more precious seem to be refining Heaven Tao grade materials. It can't be. Didn't he want to refine reincarnation grade materials? How did he raise it to Heaven Tao grade now? Isn't this too exaggerated? How can it be done like this? I know a little about this. As long as the original item has room for improvement, it can continue to be refined by adding materials. All of them were shocked by Yi Tianyun's actions. He suddenly increased it, and it was with the abilities of a grade 3 divine craftsman. Wasn't he courting death? Haha, this fool actually suddenly improved. Does he want to overtake us? Elder Xiao Tian burst into laughter after he recovered from his shock. He felt that Yi Tianyun was a joke. Elder Dongyun, are all your disciples so arrogant? A grade 3 divine creation master wants to refine a heavenly Tao grade artifact. The power of the explosion will be quite shocking. Elder East Cloud was similarly stunned by Yi Tianyun's actions. He was at the heavenly Tao realm. It would be fine if he could overtake him, but if he failed, the consequences would be severe. The power of the explosion was astonishing. It was not something that ordinary people could withstand. But he didn't shout for Yi Tianyun to stop. They couldn't interfere with their own disciples, let alone interfere with their disciples' judgment. He could only watch silently from the side. Can he still create a miracle? Elder East Cloud did not say anything. Instead, he was feeling doubtful. Yi Tianyun's actions attracted the attention of all the elders, and all of them had strange expressions on their faces. Even those who didn't understand what Yi Tianyun was refining were aware of what he was refining. Is he crazy? I remember that the materials he used should be reincarnation grade treasures. The difficulty isn't low. Isn't he going to refine a heavenly Tao grade treasure by force? That's right. Even if he wants to make a breakthrough, he should stop his previous refinement. There's a higher chance of success if he changes the armor type. He's refining a heavenly Tao grade treasure right away. That's too reckless. Those with some knowledge shook their heads and felt that Yi Tianyun was too unwise. The most suitable method was naturally to cancel what he was currently refining and choose something with a lower difficulty and a higher success rate. A heavenly Tao grade treasure would definitely score the highest points. But if he failed, it would be a waste of time and energy. Of course, Yi Tianyun knew how difficult it was. He kept brandishing his hands and unleashed all his skills. It was undeniable that the Heavenly Tao grade was extremely difficult. The success rate was basically fixed at 10%, which was frighteningly low. But if he wanted to get first place, he had to do it. Even with the demon fire, the success rate was still 10%. The main reason was that the difficulty was too high. If he didn't increase the grade, it would be difficult to achieve a high increase. The success rate is only 10%. Then let's increase it. Luck Aura, activate. Under the frenzied activation of the Luck Aura, the success rate suddenly increased to 50%. This was the limit of the Luck Aura. There was no way for him to break through it anymore. He would have to rely on his own abilities to make up for the remaining 50% success rate. But to be able to increase the success rate to 50% was already quite shocking. Yi Tianyun wasn't going to end it so easily. His eyes flashed. Looks like I have no choice but to use the Burning Heaven Sacred Flame. He could only use the Burning Heaven Sacred Flame, because after using the Burning Heaven Sacred Flame, the success rate of forging would increase by 20%. With the support of a decent sacred flame, the success rate would naturally be increased. He originally didn't intend to use it, but it seemed like he couldn't suppress it anymore. In order to get first place, he had to use it. But exposing it wasn't a problem. In any case, no one would be able to snatch such a treasure away. They would only value him more. Xiong. All of a sudden, a burning heaven sacred flame appeared in the air. If the divine emperor Yu Qin was beside him, he would definitely be shocked. The burning heaven sacred flame that she was so proud of was actually used by Yi Tianyun. Now, it wasn't just the divine emperor Yu Qin who was shocked. It could be said that all the elders present were shocked. Some of them even stood up directly, dumbfounded. Sacred flame, it's the sacred flame. This thought echoed in their minds. They didn't expect that Yi Tianyun would have a sacred flame. The rarity of a sacred flame was much higher than that of a demonic flame. But now, it had appeared in Yi Tianyun's body. Not only did he have a demonic flame, but he also had a sacred flame. This was simply heaven-defying. Yi Tianyun ignored their shocked gazes. He kept adding other materials in his hands, refining the impurities of these materials and strengthening them layer by layer. Soon, divine light began to descend from the sky, which meant that he had already reached the final step. As long as he dragged the corresponding divine light over, the heavenly path treasure would be successful. One last step. Yi Tianyun's eyes flashed as he looked up at the falling heavenly law divine light. He raised his hand and pulled the heavenly law divine light into his heavenly law treasure. However, he felt like he was in a tug-of-war when he dragged the divine light down. It was extremely difficult. Every time he dragged the divine light, it would consume a lot of experience points. He felt like his astral powers were being drained. Chapter 1159. The effect of the heavenly Tao divine light was similar to that of the Lord of Heaven in Shu Bo. In fact, it depended on how much he could pull down and whether it was more or less. The more heavenly Tao divine light he pulled down, the more difficult it would be. The good thing was that it would make the treasure more effective. If he pulled down too little, it would result in failure, which was the most serious problem. Every heavenly Tao treasure had its own standard, and the defensive equipment had to be fewer. Not only was it difficult to pull it down, but it was even more difficult to control it. Yi Tianyun felt that it was extremely strenuous. It felt like a tug-of-war, but the person pulling the rope wasn't an ordinary person, but a giant. The pulling force made him feel like he was dealing with an expert at the level of the Lord of Heaven. It was no wonder that some people felt that he wasn't a grade 4 divine creation master. Just the force used to pull the divine light needed to be very strong. The consumption was also extremely huge. After breaking through to the level of the Lord of Heaven, one's body could hold more star power and could last longer. Therefore, even a grade 4 divine creation master wouldn't be able to forge a heavenly Tao treasure if their cultivation level was too low. However, Yi Tianyun did it, and he felt that he would be fine. An Earth monarch actually dares to do this. It seems like dragging the heavenly Tao divine light is very strenuous. I wonder if he can persevere. Forging a heavenly Tao artifact requires even more divine light. Can that brat hold on? If he fails, It will be a joke. There isn't much time to begin with. If he fails, I wonder if he can make it in time? None of them were optimistic about Yi Tianyun. They originally thought that the grade wasn't high enough. Now that the grade seemed fine, the cultivation level couldn't keep up. Elder Xiao Tian and the others were startled, but they immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Yi Tianyun's cultivation level was slightly lower, so the difficulty was slightly higher. It seemed like it was very easy to fail, and he wouldn't be able to successfully forge it. Fail, he must fail. Elder Xiao Tian and the others didn't shout it out. If they shouted it out in front of so many people, wouldn't they be scolded to death by the other elders? Even the region lord of the Glaze region wouldn't be happy to curse others like this. Therefore, they could only pray and hope that Yi Tianyun would fail immediately. On the other hand, Elder Eastcloud was praying incessantly for Yi Tianyun to succeed. However, Yi Tianyun seemed to be having more and more trouble pulling the divine light down. It was very difficult for him to pull down a portion of the divine light, and it was very taxing on him. This godlight sure is taxing, and it takes up a lot of energy. It looks like the heavenly Tao treasure godlight is too hard to carry. Yi Tianyun narrowed his eyes, trying to think of a way to ease the burden. While he was stuck here, Elder Xiao Tian finally couldn't help but laugh. Sometimes, being too greedy will result in failure. His standard was not bad, but his cultivation was too weak. If he had cultivated for a while longer before participating, he might have been able to succeed. Elder Dongyun, this is truly a pity. Elder Xiao Tian's words had a hidden meaning. It sounded like he was feeling sorry, but it was actually a form of mockery. With his personality, saying such words was like a weasel paying respects to a chicken. How could it be sincere? Shut your mouth. He hasn't even failed yet. Elder Dongyun shouted angrily at him. Now that Yi Tianyun hadn't failed yet, Elder Dongyun was making sarcastic remarks. How could Elder Dongyun not be angry? It's already like this, and you're still stubbornly holding on. Elder Xiao Tian's face was full of disdain. I won't say anything about you supporting your own disciple, but it looks like you've already succeeded, and you're still stubbornly holding on. Elder Xiao Tian, have you forgotten what you said before? What's the result after that? Elder Dongyun sneered. This. Elder Xiao Tian's face darkened. That was before. It looks like it'll be very difficult to succeed now. If he can still succeed, I'll eat this furnace. Everyone turned to look at him in shock. He actually dared to say something like that. Was he really not afraid of being slapped in the face? He spoke so confidently, and a large part of it was because he could see that Yi Tianyun was having a hard time. If this continued, there was no way he would succeed. Instead, he would collapse. Huh! Elder Xiao Tian, I'm really looking forward to you eating this furnace. The person who answered him was actually Yi Tianyun, who was standing to the side. Even Yi Tianyun had heard their bet, so he turned to look at him. Immediately, Yi Tianyun revolved the power within his body. This was the power of a heavenly venerate bestowed upon him by the vast heavenly venerate. This was an existence that could suppress the power of the heavenly Tao. After he revolved his power, he forcefully dragged the heavenly Tao divine light down. As he dragged, a large portion of the heavenly Tao divine light was easily pulled out and stuffed into his heavenly Tao treasure. This feeling was like his opponent had withered, causing his opponent to loosen his grip and be unable to continue dragging Yi Tianyun. Yi Tianyun pulled the heavenly Tao divine light down in a relaxed manner, as if he were drinking water. As expected of the power of a heavenly venerate. It has a special effect when it comes to suppressing the power of the heavenly Tao. Yi Tianyun was pleasantly surprised. It seemed that the power bestowed upon him by the vast heavenly venerate was still very useful, especially when it came to refining weapons. It had a very shocking effect. This scene caused everyone's eyes to widen. They were dumbfounded by Yi Tianyun's actions. It was clearly difficult to pull the heavenly Tao divine light down previously, but in the blink of an eye, he could easily pull it down. It was as if he had become a giant that could drag anything down. This is impossible. Elder Xiao Tian and the others were stunned. They had just said this, and Yi Tianyun had immediately slapped them in the face. Could it be that he had been pretending before? But regardless of whether it was an act or not, He had already said it. Wouldn't he really have to swallow this furnace? Interesting. As expected of someone who has completed the heavenly venerate path. He even knows how to use the power of a heavenly venerate. The light blue eyes of the region master flashed with a strange light. She was quite appreciative of Yi Tianyun's actions. Although the region master was not a heavenly venerate, she was infinitely close to it. She could feel the energy fluctuations within. Therefore, when Yi Tianyun used it, she immediately sensed it. Yes, no wonder he dared to try it. It turns out that he has the power of a heavenly venerate. Elder Go Huang slapped his thigh, his eyes full of surprise. This was Yi Tianyun's trump card. Not only did he have the sacred flame of the burning heavens, but he also had the power of a heavenly venerate. With these two great abilities, how could he not be able to refine it? Yi Tianyun fiercely pulled down a large piece of heavenly Tao divine light before quickly cutting it off. He did not dare to continue to let the heavenly Tao divine light fall. If he continued to pull it down, it would not be a power that he could control. Although he had the power of a heavenly venerate, the power of a heavenly venerate was not omnipotent. In particular, if he pulled too much, the result would be a terrible heavenly tribulation. Such a heaven-defying treasure would naturally be dissatisfied with it, and it would want to completely suppress it. In his current situation, it was not easy to deal with this heavenly tribulation. In particular, he did not want to expose his combat strength in front of so many people. Chapter 1160. After Yi Tianyun stopped dragging the heavenly divine light, he began to fuse it. The heavenly treasure inside began to fuse with the heavenly divine light bit by bit. There seemed to be no rejection, and everything went smoothly. Although the consumption was shocking, the planet in his body was huge, and the amount of astral power it could contain far exceeded that of powerhouses of the same cultivation level. He was now a 9 refined Earth Lord, but the energy in his body was comparable to that of the Lord of Heaven. This was the capital of his arrogance. Therefore, refining this heavenly treasure was not a problem at all. There were difficulties, but everything was within his control. Especially with the protection of the lucky aura, it greatly increased his success rate in refining the pills. However, this was the most crucial moment. Whether he could completely fuse with the heavenly divine light was also an extremely difficult task. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. As for the performance of the other contestants, they had long been ignored by the audience. They felt that everything else was just a foil. As long as Yi Tianyun succeeded, even Shu Bo and the Lord of Heaven would be a foil. For a heavenly Tao treasure to be refined by a human at that, it was definitely an incredible feat. No one would be willing to believe anything that was said. Fail, you must fail. Elder Xiao Tian was about to go crazy. If he succeeded in the last step, he would really go crazy. However, no matter how he shouted and prayed in his heart, he could not stop Yi Tianyun from succeeding. Finally, with his strong foundation, he successfully forged a heavenly Tao-grade treasure. Buzz. Accompanied by a pleasant sound, a bracelet flew out of the furnace and landed steadily in his hand. The bracelet was engraved with spots of starlight, as if there were countless stars on it. It looked very beautiful. Especially with the power of the heavenly Tao, a faint halo covered the bracelet, forming circles and circles of ripples. The refining is done. Elders, please evaluate. Yi Tianyun raised the bracelet in his hand high, his face full of excitement and excitement. He finally refined it, and he could prove his ability in front of everyone, to prove that the human race also had infinite possibilities, and not the lowest existence. As soon as these words were spoken, they fiercely entered their ears like thunder. Elder Xiao Tian was even more stunned. He stared blankly at the bracelet in Yi Tianyun's hand, feeling that it was inconceivable. In the end, Yi Tianyun succeeded. It was an inconceivable treasure, an existence that would be recorded in the annals of history. Yi Tianyun had broken a new record. His cultivation had not reached the level of the Lord of Heaven, but he was able to refine a heavenly axiom-level treasure. This was enough to show disdain for all the geniuses in the palace of God's history. Especially since he had successfully refined it with the identity of a human, everyone was dumbfounded. Good. Elder Dongyun laughed heartily. He was so excited that he was about to go crazy. The other elders didn't know what to say. Since the refinement was successful, what else could they say? Not bad, it has been successfully refined. Glaze Region Lord smiled faintly and said, very talented human, the most talented human I've ever seen in my life. Looks like the final champion is going to be him. That's right, it was indeed him. Elder Go Huang had a complicated look in his eyes. I didn't expect a disciple from a first-grade celestial realm to be so dazzling. Fortunately, this disciple was obtained by us. If he had been obtained by another celestial realm, it would have been our loss. Yes, and it would have been a great loss. Given enough time, he will definitely become a great person in the future. It's not impossible for him to break through to the heavenly venerable rank. Glaze Region Lord's beautiful face revealed a rare happy smile. Looks like we won't be able to poach him. Elder Wu Yuan looked at the dazzling bracelet and instantly felt bitter in his heart. To be able to refine a heavenly axiom level treasure at such a cultivation level meant that Yi Tianyun's achievements in forging were even higher. There was no need to evaluate the scores. Yi Tianyun was definitely going to be the champion unless someone could surpass him. But from the looks of it, no one could surpass him. Everyone was reduced to a supporting role. Lord of Heaven Shu Bo's face paled. He originally thought that he would be able to obtain first place, but now, he was ruthlessly pressed to the ground by Yi Tianyun and even rubbed against him several times. He couldn't even get up. What arrogance! What genius! Everything was ruthlessly smashed to smithereens. Elder Xiao Tian, can you eat this furnace now? Luckily, my disciple is a little more hardworking. Otherwise, I really wouldn't be able to see you eat this furnace. Elder Dong Yun sneered. This was the result of his cheap mouth. Couldn't he have just stood there obediently? Why did he have to say such words? Elder Xiao Tian was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. It was bad enough that the first place was snatched away, but now, he still had to eat the furnace in front of so many people. This was simply inhumane. Good, good. I'll eat it. Elder Xiao Tian roared and transformed into a huge fire snake. He opened his mouth and swallowed one of the furnaces. Then, he reverted to his original form and swallowed the furnace just like that. This scene caused everyone to be dumbfounded. He really swallowed it. However, swallowing a furnace was not a problem for him at all. He was originally from the ancient giant snake clan and could transform into a huge snake demon. Swallowing a furnace was not a problem at all. If he couldn't transform, that would be really awkward. How could he swallow such a huge furnace? Crush the furnace into powder and swallow it bit by bit. When Yi Tianyun saw this, he almost spat it out. This was simply cheating. He thought that it would be more difficult, but who knew that it would be so easy? To Elder Xiao Tian, it was not difficult at all. After eating it, Elder Dong Yun was speechless. He could only silently agree that Elder Xiao Tian had fulfilled his promise. Are you satisfied? Elder Xiao Tian glared at him fiercely. Yes. Elder Dong Yun looked at him and smiled faintly. At least Elder Xiao Tian is a man of his word. This is my loss. Elder Xiao Tian coldly snorted and didn't say anything else. Anyway, they had no way of winning now. Very quickly, after they finished, the others also finished. The highest grade was undoubtedly a high-grade reincarnation level treasure. Similarly, there were people who had refined it. However, compared to the heavenly path refined by Yi Tianyun and Shu Bo Lord of Heaven, it was already overshadowed. It could not be compared at all. Fiery Lotus Lord of Heaven and Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven had also performed to their highest level. They charged into the top 5 in one go. However, they still did not enter the top 3. Being able to enter the top 5 was already a good result. I will now announce the results. The top 3 are Earth Monarch Tianyun, Shu Bo Lord of Heaven, and Wood Lord of Heaven. You can receive personal guidance from me. You can also make a request. You can make a request now or wait until the end of the competition and come to the Region Lord's shrine. Region Lord Colored Glaze smiled faintly. As for the other participants, your performance was also very outstanding. You will also be given a reward. Chapter 1161. The disciples who participated in the great competition of the God Creation Palace would receive a reward. The problem was the difference in rank. Some received average rewards, while others received decent ones. Yi Tianyun was one of them. Yi Tianyun did not make this request in front of the crowd. After all, it would only make people think more if he said it out. Therefore, it was better to just tell Liu Li, Domain Lord. There was no need to say it in front of so many people. After the competition ended, the audience dispersed. However, they all remembered one participant, and that was Yi Tianyun. A human cultivator had successfully won the championship, suppressing all the outstanding talents. Ding! Successfully completed the special quest, take first place in the God Creation Palace. Reward: 1x Forging God Stone, 100 million crazy points, 10 million mastery. At the same time, you will receive the title Strongest Newcomer King of the God Creation Palace. Strongest Newcomer King of the God Creation Palace. In the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm, the success rate of forging will be increased by 10%. Commander points will be increased by 2,000 point. This title was quite good. It could increase the success rate of forging. However, it was limited to the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm. After leaving, it would not have any effect. The rewards of these quests are quite good. Yi Tianyun is very satisfied with this. It's good to come to these quests occasionally and complete them on the way. At this time, he returned with Elder Dongyun. Everyone was cheering. Yi Tianyun actually took first place. Previously, they did not have much confidence in Yi Tianyun. They were completely holding on to the hope that Yi Tianyun would not be at the bottom. Who knew that Yi Tianyun would rush to first place in one go? Even their senior brother was defeated. What followed was a collective celebration. They once again went to the restaurant to drink and celebrate Yi Tianyun winning first place. They also celebrated that he had won glory for them. They had always been at the bottom. Now, they could finally hold their heads up high. Even without Yi Tianyun's help, Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven and Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven would have won glory for them. Although he couldn't get into the top 3, he could at least get into the top 5. This was a pretty good result, and no one would look down on him anymore. After the celebration, Yi Tianyun went directly to the Domain Lord Shrine to look for Glazed Domain Lord. What he wanted to do the most right now was to condense the water core as soon as possible and put everything else aside for the time being. Under his guidance, the guards of the Divine Hall of the Domain Chief brought him to the place where the Azure Domain Chief was. As soon as he entered, he saw the Lord of Heaven walk out from inside. When the two of them looked at each other, Shu Bo Lord of Heaven was silent for a while before he said, "Next time, I won't lose." "I hope so." Yi Tianyun just smiled faintly and didn't say anything more to him. Would there be a next time? He did not have much interest in these small squabbles. Who knew where he would go when his cultivation level rose? Why would he still stay in the Palace of Gods and compete with them in weapon forging? If it wasn't for the fact that he could enter the water core to cultivate here, he really couldn't be bothered with the competition in the Palace of Gods. After entering, what came into view was a world of water, and the surroundings were filled with the power of the mercury. In between breaths, he felt as though he was sucking in a thick ocean, which made him feel a chill down his spine. He had just entered, and he could already feel an incomparably huge water core beneath his feet. The thick power of the mercury surged up from beneath his feet, which was of great help to the cultivation of powerhouses with the water attribute physique. Such an amazing place was owned by the Glazed Domain Chief, and she stayed here every day to cultivate. Naturally, her cultivation level wouldn't be low. Lord Glazed Domain Chief. Yi Tianyun walked in and saw her leaning lazily on the chair. You're here." Only then did the Glazed Domain Chief slowly sit up. When she raised her hand, everything seemed so natural. Even the surrounding power of the mercury started to fluctuate slowly, rippling out in circles. "Lord Glazed Domain Chief, I'm here this time to ask for a favor." Yi Tianyun immediately explained the purpose of his visit. "Say it." "I've promised before. As long as it's within my acceptable range, I'll do it for you," the Glazed Domain Chief said. "But in terms of guidance, I don't think I need to give too much guidance. You've completed the way of the Heavenly Lord. I'm sure the guidance of the Heavenly Lord will be more useful than mine." "No, Lord Glazed Domain Chief, you can't say that. The guidance of the way of the Heavenly Lord is limited, especially since Lord Glazed Domain Chief has a special physique. If the attributes are the same, it would undoubtedly be better to receive guidance from Lord Glazed Domain Chief. Yi Tianyun smiled faintly. Moreover, in the way of the Heavenly Lord, I'm just a disciple in name and not an official disciple. I won't be able to receive any guidance. Therefore, if there's anything I don't understand, I hope that Lord Glazed Domain Chief can give me some guidance. He was speaking the truth. The vast Heavenly Lord really didn't give them any guidance. He only gave them martial arts and didn't say anything else. If he wanted to receive complete guidance, he had to at least break through to the Heavenly Lord level. That was something that would take an indefinite amount of time. The Glazed Domain Chief was already a half-step Heavenly Lord. If she didn't have the qualifications to give him guidance, then who would? You've put it nicely. Let's hear what your request is first. The Glazed Domain Chief smiled faintly. I want to cultivate in the water core for a period of time. I wonder if Lord Glazed Domain Chief is willing? Yi Tianyun said immediately. Boom. At this time, a strong wave of air came crashing down from all directions, giving Yi Tianyun a huge impact. There was no doubt that his request had touched the heart of the Glazed Domain Chief. Do you know what you're saying? The Glazed Domain Chief's aura didn't dissipate. Instead, she looked at him coldly. I know what I'm saying. The water core is extremely strict. A little carelessness will affect Lord Glazed Domain Chief's cultivation. It's closely related to breaking through to the Heavenly Lord level. Therefore, it's not that I can't go in casually, lest I affect Lord Glazed Domain Chief. Yi Tianyun said in a deep voice, I definitely won't do anything. I just want to cultivate in the water core for a period of time to complete the final breakthrough. Complete the final breakthrough? The Glazed Domain Chief sized him up and said, You have the sacred flame, which is an existence that counters our water attribute. Why would you need to use the water core? This was the most important thing for her now. Everything that Yi Tianyun said was basically correct. She wasn't too vigilant when others went in. However, Yi Tianyun had the burning heaven sacred flame. If she wasn't careful, it would indeed affect her cultivation. It's a long story, but I do need the water core to cultivate. I hope that Lord Glazed Domain Chief can fulfill my request. Yi Tianyun didn't say too much. If he explained that he was here to break through to the 10th refinement Earth Monarch, would she believe him? The Glazed Domain Chief narrowed her eyes and sized him up. After a moment, she said slowly, All right, I promise you. Chapter 1162. Hearing that Colored Glaze Region Lord had agreed to his request, Yi Tianyun heaved a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to say something, Colored Glaze Region Lord smirked. Although I said I can, you still have to agree to one condition. Colored Glaze Region Lord squinted her eyes and smiled. Yi Tianyun's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly had a bad premonition. This. Colored Glaze Region Lord, didn't you say that you could agree to this request? Yi Tianyun frowned. That's true, but your request has already exceeded a normal request. Even if you get first place in the God Creation Palace, it's still a little too difficult. Colored Glaze Region Lord smiled faintly. Usually, only I want to enter the water core to cultivate. Even if Elder Go Huang and the rest want to cultivate, they need my approval. It's not a place where anyone can cultivate just because they want to. To put it bluntly, the request was too much. It was no longer something that could be obtained by getting first place. All right then. What condition do I have to agree to? Yi Tianyun looked at her and asked. This condition is relatively simple. Don't join the third-grade God domain. Just stay here. Colored Glaze Region Lord said in a low voice, Of course, it's not that you can't join in the future. At least not now. Even if someone tries to recruit you, don't choose to join. Correspondingly, I guarantee that the Heavenly Spring God domain will provide you with the best resources. It will allow you to cultivate to the God Emperor level without any pressure. You will even have a chance to break through to the Heavenly Venerable level. At least until you are below the Heavenly Venerable level, you won't have to worry about resources. Colored Glaze Region Lord's expression was solemn. It was obvious that this was a very serious matter. Yi Tianyun's general situation was related to the God Domain War. Colored Glaze Region Lord didn't want him to join the God Domain War. If he joined now, he would only be cannon fodder. Most importantly, if he stayed in the Heavenly Spring God Domain, he would be able to retain some strength and become a pillar in the future. Why? Yi Tianyun had a wrong guess, but he still asked to see how Colored Glaze Region Lord would explain. The divine territory isn't peaceful right now. Previously, Elder Go Huang told me that there are divine beasts from the divine territory coming to snatch geniuses. This is actually the actions of a grade 3 god realm. It's to attract more geniuses over to become their slaves and cannon fodder. Very soon, the divine domain war will begin. This will be an extremely cruel battle. It's all for the sake of climbing to a higher position. Domain Lord Glaze shook her head and said, with your ability, there will definitely be a grade 3 god realm that will try to recruit you. At that time, they will also do their best to nurture you. At that time, you will be able to contribute to them. If your cultivation is strong enough, you might be able to survive. But if you don't have enough time, you might just become one of the cannon fodder. If we stay in the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm, it won't be too serious even if we are affected. At the very least, we elders will choose to go into battle, not you. The explanation of the Glazed Region Lord made Yi Tianyun feel somewhat comfortable. To put it bluntly, even if the sky were to collapse, these experts would be the ones to stop it. As for the grade 3 god realms, they had to fight, unless they didn't want to break through to the grade 4 god realm. Hence, at least those who were still alive and had some fighting strength would not be sent out to fight. Although the Glazed Region Lord wanted to preserve some of the strength of the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm, it was also for their own good. I understand the gist of it. But I'm a little interested in this kind of divine domain war. Yi Tianyun smiled faintly and said, but since Lord Glazed Region Lord has said so, I'll agree not to join the grade 3 god realm. But if it really does affect this place, I hope that Lord Glazed Region Lord will bring me to participate in the war. Is this possible? Yi Tianyun just wanted to kill once to increase his cultivation. When he broke through to the 10th Refinement Earth Monarch realm, the amount of experience he needed would definitely be huge. For this reason, he needed this war, and the Divine Domain War was undoubtedly the best choice. It was just that he didn't know when it would start. Hence, there was no harm in agreeing to it. When the time came, who would know if he sneaked out and entered the Divine Domain War? As long as you have enough strength, you'll have to participate even if you don't want to. The Glazed Region Lord smiled and said, but I don't think it will be your turn to fight. In that case, you've agreed to it. Swear an oath, and I'll let you go to the water core to cultivate. No problem, I swear that I won't join any third-grade god domain before the Battle of God Domain, Yi Tianyun said as he started to make a vow. Soon, the vow mark was branded in the sky, indicating that the vow was made. To him, the original intention of joining a grade 3 god realm was to have good resources and to gain some experience by participating in the Divine Domain War. Now that the Glazed Region Lord had said that she could provide him with the corresponding resources, why not stay here? He liked the atmosphere of the God Creation Palace, so he could stay here for the time being. Very well, then I'll bring you to the water core now. Although the water core doesn't care about your heaven-burning sacred fire, don't casually ignite these flames, the Glazed Region Lord reminded him. No problem. Immediately after, the Glazed Region Lord brought him to the water core. Through the teleportation array, he could easily teleport to the area where the water core was located. As soon as he teleported down, he immediately felt an even denser mercury force rushing toward him. This feeling was similar to meeting a life core, just that the attributes were different. Soon, under the guidance of the Glazed Region Lord, they arrived at a huge door. With a light push, the door slowly opened. Just as a small opening was opened, she walked in and gestured for Yi Tianyun to follow her. After Yi Tianyun entered, he saw the huge water core. Compared to the life core he saw in the Sacred Palace of Life, it was many times larger. The two could not be compared. After entering, he immediately felt as if he had entered a world of water. Countless mercury forces filled him. This is the water core. You stay here and cultivate. I'll go out and busy myself with some matters. Once I'm done, I will also come in to cultivate. In the meantime, you can stay here and cultivate." After the glazed region lord finished her instructions, she turned around and left without saying anything else. "I hope I can succeed this time." Yi Tianyun took a deep breath, sat down beside the water core, and began to cultivate. He had spent so much effort to break through to the 10th refining Earth Lord level. If he still could not succeed, he could only look for other ways. Chapter 1163. There was no difficulty in condensing a water core. All he needed to do was to continuously absorb it. In fact, it was a transformation process. He could not directly move the huge water core in front of him, but he could absorb it and transform it into his own energy. This was like absorbing the life core before. If it were not for the fact that he could not have two cores at the same time, he would have successfully condensed it. For him, this was not a big problem. He could easily condense it with just a little more time. Soon, under his powerful control, the water core quickly solidified and expanded bit by bit. At the same time, it began to condense into another planet. This speed was not fast or slow. Everything was repeating the previous work, gathering bit by bit. Soon, a small planet was formed and rapidly expanded. Everything was slow and under his control. As time passed, more than a month passed in the blink of an eye. In his body, an even bigger water planet had already condensed. The huge water planet looked like a huge crystal ball. It was very beautiful. However, compared to the life planet next to it, which was Jupiter, it was much smaller. They were not on the same level at all. This meant that he needed to condense more water cores, and it would take a lot of time. This was not a problem for him. Under his crazy absorption, the water core began to fluctuate slightly, and the energy was quickly extracted by him. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. Glazed Region Lord still had not returned. He did not know what she was busy with, but she still had not returned. Yi Tianyun could not be bothered. In any case, he could just let him absorb the water core. As the months passed, the water planet in Yi Tianyun's body became bigger and bigger. He did not know how much energy he had absorbed from the water core. If it was converted into experience, who knew how many billions of experience points it would be? However, he needed to fulfill the conditions for a breakthrough, so he had to first condense the water planet. Finally, the size of the water planet condensed was almost as big as the Jupiter planet next to it. Waves of the water planet's energy began to wrap around the Jupiter planet, nourishing it. This was obviously a symbiotic level. It constantly nourished the Jupiter planet, causing the trees on it to grow rapidly. They were more luxuriant than before. It was as if they were being nourished by rain, making them more vigorous and filled with more life force. This feeling makes Yi Tianyun feel comfortable. It is obvious that he is on the right path, not the wrong one. Previously, when he condensed the other life core, there were signs of collapse. That kind of situation did not occur here. Instead, it seemed to be very stable and there were no problems at all. That's it. There doesn't seem to be any problem. Yi Tianyun was completely immersed in the fusion, allowing the two planets to completely connect with each other, forming a state of orbiting each other. He didn't have this kind of experience, but he had a hunch that the two must be completely fused to form a perfect form. Time passed quickly, but the region mistress colored glaze still hadn't returned. If she had returned, she would have definitely seen the two types of energy radiating from Yi Tianyun's body. One was the life force, and the other was the power of water. The two energies blended together in perfect harmony, without the slightest sense of conflict. After he had completely stabilized, Yi Tianyun slowly opened his eyes. His eyes emitted two different kinds of light, looking very beautiful. I finally succeeded. Yi Tianyun took a deep breath and felt the two huge planets orbiting in his body. The two were inseparable, and the key was that they complemented each other. The water planet constantly nourished the energy, making the Jupiter planet more vigorous. Following that, the Jupiter planet returned the life force to nourish the water planet, forming a symbiotic effect. This was the most ideal state at present. In fact, he felt that it could be even more perfect. No matter what, he had reached the target and had two planets. No one would believe that someone could actually possess the power of two planets if they were to tell others about this. especially when the two formed a symbiotic state. This way they could generate energy for each other, allowing Yi Tianyun to last longer. His energy would increase by a lot, allowing him to exhaust his opponent to death even without taking elixirs when fighting. The upgrade standard has been completed. Now, I just have to wait to break through to the Lord of Heaven. Yi Tianyun recalled the scene in the heaven-pilfering divine land that he had dreamt of. It was very likely that when he broke through to the Lord of Heaven, he would have to endure such a terrifying tribulation. Based on his current situation, he didn't feel that he was fully prepared. He still needed the support of other forces. Of course, he still needed to break through to the 10th refining Earth Lord, and then he could break through to the Lord of Heaven. He hoped that when he broke through to the 10th refining Earth Lord, he would not encounter that abnormal tribulation. Forget it, I will continue to absorb it and continue to strengthen myself. Yi Tianyun's eyes lit up. He sat down and continued to absorb the energy of the water core. This energy was constantly turned into his own experience, and it was no longer condensing the water planet. He needed to accumulate experience now, which could be used to train his subordinates and pets. For example, he now has a star overlord, but he didn't dare to release it now, but its cultivation is also low. If he can strengthen it, its power will be amazing. Anyway, he can't go out now, so he will absorb the experience first. Under his continuous absorption, the energy of the water core was quickly extracted, but it felt like it was endless. There was no sign of it being drained. If he could get this one, it would be equivalent to getting a huge treasure trove of experience. It's just that it takes too long to absorb. It's safe, but it takes a lot of time. If he can kill the enemy and go back and forth, it will definitely increase a lot of experience. The key is that crazy point. These important values can improve his ability. He didn't know how long he absorbed, but finally the door slowly opened, and Lioli Realm Master walked in from the outside, looking exhausted. She came to his side and looked at him. It seems that your cultivation is good, I will take a rest first. She didn't wait for Yi Tianyun to answer, and directly sat down to recover. The next moment, it turned into a black hole, and the suction force is dozens of times stronger than Yi Tianyun's, and the effect is even 100 times stronger. This kind of super suction force shocked Yi Tianyun. It seems that this is the power of a half-step heavenly master. Absorbing it is like a sea cow drinking water, and in a blink of an eye, a large area is drained. No wonder Lioli Realm Master didn't let others come in. Just her absorption alone has consumed a lot of energy. How can she let others come in to absorb? Chapter 1164. Yi Tianyun stayed at the side and followed along to absorb, waiting for Region Lord Glaze to wake up. It seemed like she had just experienced a great battle, otherwise she wouldn't have absorbed so much water core energy to recover herself. After about half a month, Region Lord Glaze's condition finally improved, and it seemed to be much better than before. She then slowly opened her eyes and heaved a sigh of relief. As soon as she woke up, Yi Tianyun came over and asked, Region Lord Glaze, what exactly happened? Region Lord Glaze returned so late, and with so much exhaustion, it definitely wasn't just a simple meeting. She must have participated in some great battle. That is a strange place, and you don't have the qualifications to go there for the time being. Wait until your cultivation breaks through to the Lord of Heaven, then you will barely have the qualifications to go there. Region Lord Glaze didn't say much, and looked at him and said, You are now a 9 refinements Earth Monarch. If you take another step, you will become a Lord of Heaven, and you will be much stronger than an ordinary Lord of Heaven. Only then will you have some qualifications. If it was an ordinary Lord of Heaven, you wouldn't have the qualifications at all. Wait until you break through to the Lord of Heaven, then come and find me. Of course, even if you break through to the Lord of Heaven, I can't bring you there immediately. It will have to wait for a period of time. Yi Tianyun understood Region Lord Glaze. She had consumed an astonishing amount of energy, and although he didn't know where she was going, it definitely wasn't simple. When the time came, Region Lord Glaze would bring him there, and it would definitely be a shocking experience. Then, Region Lord Glaze, disciple will go back first, and come back after I break through to the Lord of Heaven, Yi Tianyun said. Region Lord Glaze nodded and said, It is more difficult for 9 refinements Earth Monarch to break through to the Lord of Heaven. It is best to choose a quiet and safe place. Let Elder Eastcloud protect you. That way, things will go a little smoother. Yi Tianyun nodded, and didn't say that he was going to break through to the 10 refinements Earth Monarch. After saying goodbye, he turned around and left. Glay's region master didn't stop him. She wouldn't protect Yi Tianyun. At least, Yi Tianyun didn't have the qualifications to do so. After Yi Tianyun left, he immediately used the teleportation godstone and disappeared in the blink of an eye. In the next moment, he appeared within the 3 dimensions. The place he wanted to undergo his tribulation was none other than outside the 3 realms. He wanted to choose to transcend the tribulation here. If he transcended the tribulation in the divine realm, the impact would be greater. He did not want others to know that he was breaking through to the 10 refinements Earth Monarch. If it was seen by others, it would definitely shock the entire God realm. It was best for him to choose to keep a low profile and not let others know that he could break through to the 10th refinement of the Earth Monarch. Just think about it, a 10th refinement Earth Monarch had never appeared before. If it was known that he was able to break through to the 10th refinement Earth Monarch realm, he would definitely be captured and interrogated about how he broke through. The method seemed simple, but it required a lot of cooperation. Most importantly, not everyone could do it. People have their own selfish motives. He didn't want to share this secret with just anyone. When the Grade 3 God Realm powerhouses found out, the consequences would be self-evident. They would definitely be captured and interrogated. I'm finally back. When Yi Tianyun felt this familiar aura, he felt that this place was the warmest. There was no place more warm than this place. After he returned, he immediately explored the situation of the 3 realms. After a quick scan, he found that the situation here was thriving. There were already more than a dozen people who had broken through to the God King realm, which was the Star-Lord realm. There were even more people who were at the Saint King realm. There was no problem. The Heavenly Cloud Divine Kingdom was still in charge of the entire 3 realms. No one dared to disobey the orders of the Heavenly Cloud Divine Kingdom. Therefore, everything was very peaceful. There were people everywhere going to the outer planets to explore and search for various resources. Compared to being trapped in the 3 realms, it was much better. At least this way, they would be able to alleviate the shortage of resources. It seems that everything is well managed. Shuiyun and the others have done a good job. Yi Tianyun was very satisfied with the management. It was the right choice to let them manage the 3 realms. When he carefully observed the situation around him, he soon saw a familiar figure. In the blink of an eye, she had grown into a slender and elegant girl. She was none other than his daughter, Yi Sishue. Now, she had grown up and become a slender and elegant girl. He didn't leave this place for a long time, but the time difference between Fan Yu and the God Realm was different. She stayed in the God Realm for 2 years, but she had spent more than 10 years here. Naturally, she had become a slender and elegant girl. Now, she had a large group of pursuers behind her. They followed her wherever she went. Yi Sishue was his daughter, the daughter of the 3 realms god. Who didn't want to pursue her? Once he became her son-in-law, he would definitely have a meteoric rise. Therefore, whether they liked or disliked her, they would crazily pursue her, hoping to achieve meteoric rise. Miss Sishue, I know a good place outside. Do you want to go there with me? What's so fun about training? I know a beautiful place, I can take you there. Miss Sishue, I have a piece of jade here. It's very beautiful. I'm sure you'll like it. These pursuers did everything they could to gain Yi Sishue's favor. But no matter what they did, Yi Sishue's face was cold and she completely ignored them. I've already said, these tricks are useless to me. I'm tired of seeing them. If you want to pursue me, you'll have to be stronger than my father first. Yi Sishue snorted coldly and rejected them. All of them showed a look of despair. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Surpassing the 3 realms god? That was a joke. How could they surpass such a powerful existence? Not to mention surpassing Yi Tianyun, just Yi Sishue alone could crush them. Now, Yi Sishue was not even 18 years old and she had already broken through to the God King stage. She could crush all existences. Even the elders were ashamed of this cultivation. They couldn't be compared to her. These pursuers were just marrying into Yi Sishue's family. Their cultivation was at most around the Saint King stage and they were much older than Yi Sishue. Therefore, not to mention surpassing Yi Tianyun, it was already very good if they could surpass Yi Sishue. Miss Sishue, this is too difficult. Some of them felt helpless. If you don't even have this much confidence, how can you talk about pursuing me? Yi Sishue snorted coldly and ignored them. Xiao Shui, your requirements are really high. Yi Tianyun suddenly appeared beside her and smiled at Yi Sishue. Yi Sishue heard this voice and turned her head in disbelief. After seeing Yi Tianyun's face clearly, she did not hesitate and rushed towards him. Chapter 1165. Yi Sishue threw herself into his arms, causing the surrounding suitors to be filled with jealousy. Some of them even glared at him with red eyes. What kind of ability did he have to make Yi Sishue throw herself into his arms? Who are you? Immediately, a suitor stood out and glared at Yi Tianyun. That's right. Who are you? Which faction are you from? You look so weak. How dare you approach Miss Sishue? All of them surrounded Yi Sishue with red eyes. It would have been fine if none of them were pursuing success, but they didn't expect someone to suddenly appear and win Yi Sishue's heart. This made them both shocked and angry. After pursuing her for so many years, a nameless brat had easily won her heart. How could they not be angry? Because Yi Sishue looked similar to Shi Xueyun, if one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't be able to tell that the two were father and daughter. In addition, Yi Tianyun had always restrained his aura. Normally, he wouldn't release his aura when he had nothing to do. Therefore, in the divine realm, those with similar cultivation would think that he was weaker. Only those with much higher cultivation than Yi Tianyun would know how high his cultivation was. Phut! Yi Sishue covered her mouth and laughed. She hugged Yi Tianyun's shoulder and said to them, "This is my man. None of you can compare to him. If you want to pursue me, you have to surpass him first." Yi Tianyun shrugged helplessly. He was indeed his daughter's first man, but he was only at the level of a father. This kind of joke was used to scare one's husband, but it was reflected in him. Surpass him? Everyone stared at Yi Tianyun with red eyes. One by one, they stood out and said sternly, "I want to duel with you." That's right. I want to duel with you too. Let's see who's stronger. Our faction is ranked in the top 5 in the 3 realms. Which faction are you from? Quickly tell us your name. None of them could guess Yi Tianyun's identity, so they hooted at the side. Yi Sishue, who was at the side, was holding her stomach. She felt that it was very funny. These people were all idiots. They couldn't even see through her father's identity. My power. Yi Tianyun smiled faintly. The 3 realms are under my control. What kind of power do you think I am? Bullshit. The 3 realms is under the control of the Heavenly Cloud's Great Emperor. You are insulting the Heavenly Cloud's Great Emperor. This is unacceptable. That's right. You can take Miss Sishue away, but you can't insult the Heavenly Cloud's Great Emperor. I will kill you. How dare you insult my idol? You bastard, I'm going to kill you. Each and every one of them was thoroughly enraged. They drew their swords and were ready to cut Yi Tianyun into pieces. Who would have thought that his prestige would be so high that no one would allow others to insult him? In reality, his prestige was indeed the highest in the 3 dimensions, and he had always been worshipped as a god. The god in charge of everything was naturally worshipped by the younger generation. It could be said that they had reached a fanatical level. Wait, he seems to be very similar to the statue standing in the imperial capital. One of the pursuers suddenly thought of something, and his body suddenly stiffened. He looked at Yi Tianyun in disbelief, and shouted with trembling fingers, "Heavenly Cloud's Great Emperor?" After saying that, his legs went soft, and he knelt on the ground. The other pursuers who were full of anger also remembered something, and they also knelt on the ground. Heavenly Cloud's Great Emperor? When they looked carefully, they really remembered that it was exactly the same as the statue. After calming down and thinking about it, how could Yi Sishue casually fall in love with other men? Before, she said that the standard was the same level as Yi Tianyun. This kind of requirement was really difficult to meet. It was not impossible for his children to have their father as their goal. Therefore, thinking about it carefully, the only person who could make Yi Sishue throw herself into his arms was her father, right? To be precise, it should be a coquettish behavior that they haven't seen for many years. Hehe, it's funny, you finally recognized me, a group of fools. Before, you said that you admired my father, but who was the one who scolded people just now? Yi Sishue covered her mouth and chuckled. She found it very funny. They were embarrassed, and some directly kowtowed, begging for Yi Tianyun's forgiveness. Okay, you don't have to blame the ignorant, you didn't mean it. Yi Tianyun waved his hand and said with a smile, go do what you need to do. After saying that, he took his daughter, turned around, and flew away, leaving a group of pursuers looking at each other. Following these pursuers, they quickly ran home to inform their father that Yi Tianyun was back. Father, you are finally back, I missed you so much. Yi Sishue's face was full of resentment. In a blink of an eye, he disappeared for more than 10 years, how could she be happy? This is the case of time imbalance. I stayed in that world for a year, but several years passed here. Yi Tianyun said helplessly. What world is that? Can I go with you? Yi Sishue's beautiful eyes lit up. You can't go there for now. Yi Tianyun shook his head. Yi Sishue immediately pouted, she found it very boring. He then smiled and comforted her. I am only saying for now, it is not safe there now, don't think that you are invincible just because you have cultivated to this level. You can only be considered as the lowest level there. It is not that I don't want to bring you there, but when things are stable, I will bring you there together. The divine domain was a must, the cultivation environment there was much better than here, he would naturally control the 3 realms to fly there. Really? Yi Sishue's eyes lit up, she was very excited. Why would I lie to you? Yi Tianyun said as he took out the star bracelet, he handed it to Yi Sishue and said, this is a gift for you, it is a treasure that I have been refining recently, treat it as compensation. Yi Sishue took it and hugged Yi Tianyun's shoulder, she said excitedly, thank you, father. Let's go see mother now, she misses you so much. Okay. Yi Tianyun nodded and followed her. When he saw Shishueyun's back again, Shishueyun turned her head subconsciously, and when she saw him, she smiled slightly and said, you are back. Well, I am back. There was nothing more beautiful than this sentence, and it made him feel very touched. Only this sentence made him feel like he was home. After a warm moment, he left this place alone and flew to the outside area. Not long after he left, a large group of powerhouses flew in from outside. When they learned that Yi Tianyun had returned, they hurried to greet him. Empress, where is the heavenly cloud's great emperor? One of the great emperors asked hurriedly. Oh, he left again. Shishueyun smiled and left the room. Chapter 1166. After a simple kiss, Yi Tianyun left the 3 realms to find a safe place to undergo the heavenly tribulation. He was almost ready. He wanted to break through to level 10 refinement Earth Lord first. After following him around, he found an uninhabited area. There was no life at all. There were rocks all around. Apart from rocks, there was nothing else. I'll undergo the heavenly tribulation here. After choosing this place, Yi Tianyun immediately gave the order, upgrade to level 10 refinement Earth Lord. Ding, testing to see if the conditions are met. Ding, conditions met. Starting upgrade. 1%. 2%, the data moved up bit by bit. It was completely different from before. It wasn't a one-time upgrade, but a gradual accumulation. It seemed like it had to be moved to at least 100% before it could really be upgraded. At the same time, a thick layer of tribulation cloud began to cover the top of his head. When he saw the thick tribulation cloud, he heaved a sigh of relief. At least it wasn't as terrifying as it was in his dream. That was an attack comparable to a Sir God's attack. It was much more powerful now, but compared to the terrifying heavenly tribulation, it was on a completely different level. It seems that when I break through to the Lord of Heaven, the heavenly tribulation I need to endure should be the heavenly tribulation in my dream. Although Yi Tianyun heaved a sigh of relief, it didn't mean that he would completely relax in the face of this heavenly tribulation. This tribulation cloud was dozens of times more powerful than before. What was rolling on it was no longer just lightning clouds and heavenly fire. There was also a strong life force. It was strange that there was such a strong life force in the tribulation cloud. Could it be that he was going to give him a hard blow and then use the life force to heal him? The answer was definitely not like that. The heavens wouldn't be so kind. They couldn't wait to kill the person undergoing the heavenly tribulation with one blow. Why would they help them heal? Unless the heavenly tribulation was completely destroyed, there would be no benefits. This benefit was based on the fact that he had destroyed the heavenly tribulation. After the heavenly tribulation exploded, the dispersed energy was absorbed by him. That was why it was regarded as a benefit. If he didn't destroy it with one punch, the benefits would be very little. It was just a single punch, and the difficulty was multiplied crazily. It was not easy to deal with. Therefore, many cultivators would not do that unless they had absolute confidence in themselves. Otherwise, they would not do it. The power has increased. Let me see how strong it is. Yi Tianyun's eyes flashed. He raised his fist and punched the tribulation cloud. Just like before, he wanted to destroy the tribulation with one punch. As soon as he got close, the tribulation cloud started to roll crazily. It was completely infuriated by Yi Tianyun. Then, a terrifying life force swept up and enveloped the area. In the blink of an eye, Yi Tianyun felt his body shrink by half. It was obvious that his life force had been sucked out. This was not injecting life force into him, but completely draining his body of life force. The terrifying suction force quickly put him in a predicament. Yi Tianyun's heart sank. As expected, the 10 refinements Earth Monarch's heavenly tribulation wasn't that easy to deal with. Then, he quickly replaced the longevity suit and restored the life force in his body. Unfortunately, he only had 2 pieces of the longevity suit. Otherwise, his recovery ability would be even more amazing. Explode. Yi Tianyun roared and immediately used the crazy damage mode, stacking his damage by 64 times, reaching an extremely terrifying value. Immediately after, he kicked fiercely, and with a boom, the void exploded from his kick. The thick tribulation clouds were quickly blown apart, leaving behind an incomparably huge hole. Based on the previous situation, with such a big hole created by his kick, it would definitely fall apart. The next moment, the huge hole was filled with amazing life force and repaired quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was repaired to its original state. There was no difference from before. To be exact, there was a big difference. The power had become more terrifying. Roar. The tribulation actually roared. A huge palm condensed from heavenly fire, heavenly thunder, and life force grabbed him. When it waved, it quickly sucked away the life force as soon as it got close to him. Its power was much stronger than before, and the power of sucking life force was much greater. The key was that it couldn't be broken. On the contrary, it could be repaired, and its power was much stronger. Explode again. Yi Tianyun's eyes turned cold. The celestial divine spear appeared in his hand and he stabbed it hard. It seemed like he was waving the spear gently, but in fact, he had waved it thousands of times. The void trembled violently under the penetration, and cracks even appeared in the void. With just one move, the tribulation was immediately pierced with thousands of holes. None of the holes were intact, and they all scattered into a large area. However, he didn't stop. He continued to stab it crazily. Every spear was so fast. Swish, swish, swish. The void was about to be penetrated by him. He pierced countless holes in the void again and again. He wanted to completely shatter the tribulation cloud, so that the tribulation cloud couldn't regenerate. Finally, in his madness, the tribulation cloud completely scattered and could no longer be connected. Let's see how you can recover this time. Beads of sweat appeared on Yi Tianyun's head, as if he had just gone through a fierce battle. It seemed that the tribulation hadn't recovered. Suddenly, an invisible force tightened its grip on him. Then, all the energy in his body was rapidly sucked out. Both the power of planet Water and planet Jupiter in his body were being sucked out crazily. This was like stripping away his power, making him return to the level of an ordinary person. However, if all the power was sucked out, he wouldn't become an ordinary person. Instead, he would turn into a pile of ashes. If even his life force was sucked out, how could he survive? This power. Yi Tianyun's heart sank. Such an invisible power couldn't be destroyed by brute force. It was like a strange power that wanted to strip away the energy in his body. If he wanted to resist this power, it wasn't something that could be solved with brute force. He needed to completely suppress this power. As expected, it's not that easy to break through to the 10 refinements Earth Monarch. It's much stranger than before. Yi Tianyun really underestimated the tribulation. No wonder he hadn't seen a 10 refinements Earth Monarch. He guessed that someone must have thought about how to break through to the 10 refinements Earth Monarch. However, in the end, he died during the tribulation. It was much more abnormal than before. Now that it was already so terrifying, thinking about it carefully, the tribulation to break through to the Lord of Heaven must be even more terrifying. Seeing that his body was getting drained, he forcefully suppressed it. It was useless. At most, he could only slightly slow down the speed, but not completely suppress this power. Chapter 1167. The heavenly tribulation of a 10 refined Earth Lord was too strange. It was no longer like before, where he could destroy it with a single punch. Now, he could destroy it with a single punch, but this strange, special energy was simply impossible to get rid of, and he could not easily suppress it. I want to see if the power of a heavenly venerate can suppress it. Yi Tianyun's eyes narrowed. He quickly used the power of a heavenly venerate to suppress this energy. After using it, the power of a heavenly venerate began to suppress it, reducing the speed of extraction. However, there was still a small amount of energy that kept extracting energy from his body. It seemed that even the power of a heavenly venerate could not completely suppress it. The power of a heavenly venerate was just a small part of the energy given by the vast heavenly venerate, which he could use. It felt a little like a protective talisman. There was no limit to the number of times it could be used. The problem was that the consumption was shocking, and there was no growth. This meant that no matter how much his cultivation broke through, this energy would not become stronger. This was a fixed amount of energy that could not grow, so it was very limited. However, the effect of suppressing those within the Divine Lord level was still very good. At the very least, it was much better than before. It seems that this heavenly tribulation also tests the cohesion of one's energy. Yi Tianyun shook his head, feeling a headache. He had indeed underestimated this heavenly tribulation, thinking that he could still destroy it with a punch. Now, even with the longevity set, it was still difficult to suppress this energy. Clearly, he needed a stronger energy to completely suppress it. I don't believe that I can't completely suppress it. Yi Tianyun quickly used the 2 planets in his body and began to rotate crazily. The 2 energies kept converging, becoming stronger and stronger. Then, they quickly rushed out. Suppress it. Boom. The 2 converging energies collided with the energy that wrapped around him and cancelled each other out. If he wanted to prevent the heavenly tribulation from extracting his energy, he had to use energy that was superior to the other parties. He did not have such power now. Only the power of a heavenly venerate had some effect. What he released now could only expel the heavenly tribulation energy that had invaded his body and not let it harm his body. Under this impact, his body no longer shrank. Under the 2 vast energies, it quickly healed, returning to its original luster and elasticity. The heavenly tribulation could not be suppressed, but at least his body was fine. Looks like I can only persevere like this. Yi Tianyun closed his eyes and began to concentrate on suppressing the energy of the heavenly tribulation. This was the most he could do at the moment. There was nothing else he could do. This was the difference in energy levels. The power of a heavenly venerate and the power of the heavenly way could easily suppress his normal star power. Stellar energy was currently the most basic form of energy. It was also the lowest level of energy. Above that was the power of the heavenly Tao, the power of an Empyrean. Only now did he truly realize that the world was so vast and he still had a long way to go. Just having crazy mode was not enough. He needed to further evolve his energy. 40%, 41%, 42%. While he was resisting the invasion of the energy, he didn't stop leveling up. Instead, he continued to level up bit by bit, albeit at a slower pace. It seemed that as long as he persisted to 100%, he would be able to successfully level up. So far, he could still persevere, but he had consumed too much energy. Not only did he need to maintain his heavenly venerate power, but he also needed to circulate the 2 planets in his body. The consumption was equally shocking. However, This was the only thing he could do now. There was no other way. Under such circumstances, the leveling data increased bit by bit. Finally, it reached 99% and was about to reach 100%. Ding! Data reached 100%. Successfully leveled up to Lord of the 10 refinement. When this pleasant voice rang out, a terrifying force instantly erupted from his body and swept out in all directions. The strange energy that had been pressing down on him earlier was directly crushed into nothingness. Following that, an extreme divine light shrouded this large space. It was as if the sky had been chiseled through, and an incomparably huge divine light shrouded down. The surroundings became bright, illuminating a large area of space. If there were cultivators around, they would definitely think that some miracle had happened. Otherwise, how could such a shocking situation occur? Yi Tianyun was completely silent. He felt waves of energy constantly rushing in his body, and the two planets resonated at the same time. At this time, he began to frantically absorb the energy of the divine light that shrouded him, nourishing his body and the power of his planets. Everything began to undergo earth-shattering changes. Behind him, an illusory figure appeared. That was the 10th chain. At the Lord of the Earth level, there would be a chain for every refinement. It was just that it wouldn't normally appear. Every time one broke through a level, there would be one more chain. Hence, this level was called refinement. Lord of the 9 refinements meant that there were 9 chains that could lock the energy firmly. When an Earth Lord completely erupted, the illusory figure behind him could see how many chains there were. From this, one could tell how strong the other party was. Now, 10 chains appeared behind Yi Tianyun. It was as if 10 planets were connected together. Each chain was glowing faintly and looked very conspicuous. These 10 chains contained the true power of the heavenly way. He had not yet stepped into the level of the Lord of Heaven, but he already possessed the terrifying power of the heavenly way. Moreover, he was much stronger than the Lord of Heaven. It could be said that they were not on the same level. If the power of the heavenly way that the Lord of Heaven controlled was equivalent to the power of the strong, then the power that he possessed now was equivalent to the King of the strong, King's power, Lord of the 10 refinements, the first Earth Lord of all times. An unprecedented level, crushing all Earth Lords. Ding! Successfully completed the main quest breakthrough to Lord of the 10 refinements, or breakthrough to the level of the Lord of Heaven. Breakthrough to Lord of the 10 refinements, gained 1 billion crazy points, 1 billion SPS, 1 billion mastery. At the same time, obtained the title First Earth Lord of all times. A lot of rewards came in, especially the title First Earth Lord of all times. It looked even more amazing. First Earth Lord of all times. All under the Earth Lord are ants. When facing an Earth Lord, it can increase the damage by 30 times. When facing the Lord of Heaven, it can increase the damage by 15 times. At the same time, it has the strongest power of the heavenly way. When facing an opponent with the power of the heavenly way, it can suppress the opponent by a maximum of 1000%. Chapter 1168. Ding! Successfully accepted main quest Suppress Evil Spirit Race, completely destroy Evil Spirit Race, reward, 5 billion crazy points, 5 billion SPS, 5 billion master. Also obtained the title Evil Spirit Race Killer. While Yi Tianyun was shocked by this title, a new main quest popped up, that is to suppress Evil Spirit Race, destroy Evil Spirit Race's domain, which is the Evil Spirit Race's residence. There was no main quest before, but now that this main quest popped up, it means that he has the ability to eliminate Evil Spirit Race. This does not mean that he can suppress Evil Spirit Race immediately. After all, having a main quest and completing it immediately are two different things. This main quest finally popped up. Yi Tianyun's eyes flashed. This main quest has not popped up. He knows that he is not in a hurry to find Evil Spirit Race for the time being. Now it seems that the time is a little bit more ripe. Even if he faces the Lord of Heaven late stage, he can still suppress it. After all, this title has a 15 times bonus effect against the Lord of Heaven. If he uses the crazy damage mode, there will be a 64 times superposition. The two add up to 79 times the damage, enough to destroy the world. What's more amazing is that there are 5 high-grade Heavenly Path martial arts. If he cultivates it, it will definitely increase the damage by dozens of times. Even the high-grade reincarnation level martial art, violent heavenly secret art, can let him erupt 15 times the power, let alone high-grade heavenly path martial arts. It seems that I have to cultivate these 5 martial arts, I can't waste them. Yi Tianyun's eyes flashed, he planned to cultivate here. The energy concentration here is not high, but the advantage is that he has a lot of time. 10 years here is equivalent to 1 year in the divine realm. It means that he doesn't have to worry about the changes over there if he stays here for a long time. On the contrary, it is an advantage here, it feels like time is accelerated. For those who want to transcend heavenly tribulation, it is not a good thing. For those who don't need to transcend heavenly tribulation, it is a race against time to cultivate. But most of them will not come here to cultivate, there are no resources here, why would they come here? For Yi Tianyun, he still has a lot of resources, and cultivating martial arts does not require a lot of resources. However, staying here would only hasten the arrival of the heavenly tribulation. Even if he was unwilling to break through to the level of the Lord of Heaven, the heavenly tribulation would still descend after 1,000 years. At that time, if his cultivation was insufficient, the terrifying heavenly tribulation would probably kill him completely. 1,000 years isn't a long time. Yi Tianyun shook his head and turned around, preparing to go into seclusion to cultivate the 5 heavens path martial arts. When he returned, he would have to deal with all kinds of greetings. Yi Tianyun was the god of the 3 realms who led them. Naturally, they had to come and pay their respects. As long as they weren't dead, they had to come obediently. On one hand, he didn't want to die. If Yi Tianyun returned, he would definitely have to greet him. If he didn't greet him and instead vented his anger on him, he would be done for. On the other hand, he wanted to see how Yi Tianyun was doing. He wanted to see how his overall situation had changed and whether he had become stronger or not. After sending them off, Yi Tianyun finally heaved a sigh of relief. Dealing with these things is really not my forte. It's been hard on you all these years. Yi Tianyun shook his head. Even though they were sincere, it was still tiring for them to come and fawn over him one after another. These are all necessary things. They are all loyal subjects, and accompanying a ruler is like accompanying a tiger. If they don't come and pay their respects to you, they would feel uneasy, Shishuayun said with a smile. I know that. Yi Tianyun nodded. How could he not understand these things? Tianyun, what do you plan to do now that you're back? Shishuayun asked. I intend to cultivate here so that I can make a breakthrough to the level of the Lord of Heaven. Yi Tianyun looked at her and said with a smile, very soon, I will be able to lead the 3 realms to the God realm. At that time, your cultivation environment will be greatly improved, and it will be much easier for you to make breakthroughs. Tianyun. Shishuayun leaned over and laid on Yi Tianyun's shoulder, don't be so hard on yourself. It's enough that you can protect the 3 realms. All these years, you have been working hard outside, but we can't help you at all. She felt very sad because she had been watching Yi Tianyun working hard outside. She cultivated like crazy. In the entire 3 realms, there were not many people who could be compared to her. But no matter how hard she cultivated, she still could not catch up with Yi Tianyun. She was already quite strong now. She had reached the 7th level of the God King stage and was ready to break through to the Earth Monarch stage. This kind of talent was very good even in the God realm. After all, the 3 realms cultivation environment was not as good as the God realms. How can you not help me? You should manage this place well, and it will be of use soon. Yi Tianyun's eyes flickered, cultivate and strengthen the 3 realms, and then we will directly control a world. He had spent so many resources to cultivate the 3 realms. It was not just for nostalgia, but to cultivate the 3 realms into the most loyal soldiers. By then, on the battlefield, any expert would be able to guard a place. It was just like when he was leading a force. It was very difficult to succeed if he only relied on himself. Even if he used violence to suppress it, without any subordinates to control it, everything would still be taken back. Therefore, he needed talents in this area. Now, he was constantly cultivating them. They would definitely be useful in the future. If he wanted to protect his hometown, he would not be able to protect it all the time just by becoming stronger. What he needed was the entire 3 realms to become completely strong. Yes, we will. Shi Xueyun's eyes flickered with excitement. She also wanted to gallop on the battlefield. Then, Yi Tianyun took out a pile of martial arts and resources and handed them to Shi Xueyun. He started to cultivate. In fact, it was very simple. He just took out the 5 high-grade Heaven's Path martial arts and used the appraisal eye to analyze them. This way, he could easily learn them. It was much faster than him cultivating bit by bit. If not for the appraisal eye, no matter how talented he was, he would not have been able to comprehend these martial arts so easily. Time slowly passed, and he gradually comprehended the 5 martial arts. The content of each of them was shocking. Compared to the martial arts he had now, they were much stronger. Basically, he could discard all the martial arts he had cultivated in the past. It's about time. I've basically finished cultivating them. This world is really boundless. Even high-grade Heaven's Path martial arts are so profound. I wonder what kind of effects the higher-grade martial arts would have. Yi Tianyun stood up. When he walked out of the door to rest, he saw Shi Xueyun discussing something with her subordinates. What are you guys discussing? You look so serious. Yi Tianyun walked over and asked with a smile. Tianyun, you're out. Shi Xueyun smiled. We're discussing 9th younger sister's coronation as the Holy Maiden. Her prestige in the 3 realms is extremely high, and everyone is talking about her being crowned as the Holy Maiden. Chapter 1169. Yes, the Saintess of the 3 realms. Sister Ju has been running back and forth for the 3 realms, helping many commoners and nurturing many experts. Perhaps it has something to do with her background. She was born poor, but she never forgot her roots. Instead, she saved the poor. No matter who she treats, she has a sacred heart. She is the kindest person in the 3 realms, so we plan to make her the Saintess. What do you think? Shi Xueyun smiled and asked. Yi Tianyun nodded. Zhu Lingyun's family background was indeed very ordinary, but now, her cultivation was not low. She had reached the God King stage, and she was also very friendly. She often helped people, so it was no surprise that she was promoted to the position of Holy Maiden. I agree, since it's everyone's request, then we'll do as they say. Yi Tianyun smiled and said, I'm not surprised that Sister Ju received such recognition. Zhu Lingyun had always been nice to her fellow disciples, and she was even nicer to strangers. She had a kind heart and knew that kindness would be rewarded. This was all because of Yi Tianyun. If it wasn't for Yi Tianyun, she would have starved to death on the streets. All right, we'll hold the Saintess coronation ceremony soon. After Yi Tianyun agreed, the decision was made. Even if he wasn't here, it would still be done. After all, Zhu Lingyun had the qualifications to do so. A few days later, the coronation ceremony was held in a grand manner in the imperial capital. All the experts of the 3 realms came to congratulate her. Whether they knew her or not, they all came to congratulate her. Most of the commoners came. Zhu Lingyun's fame had spread far and wide. Many people were helped by her, so they all came to pay their respects. The imperial capital did not reject anyone. There was no discrimination at all. Everyone was welcome to come in and watch the coronation ceremony. Such a grand coronation ceremony was unprecedented. Even Yi Tianyun's coronation ceremony didn't have so many people. It was enough to show how high her prestige was. It was comparable to a great emperor. Yi Tianyun was pleased to see this. It was all Zhu Lingyun's hard work. If she hadn't done so many good deeds and accumulated so much fame, there wouldn't have been so many people coming to visit her. Especially the commoners, who had gathered outside in circles. They may not be able to see, but that doesn't stop them from coming over to celebrate. The entire imperial capital was bustling with noise and excitement, much livelier than usual. Soon, Zhu Lingyun slowly appeared on the coronation divine stage. Yi Tianyun was standing at the top, waiting for Zhu Lingyun to walk over with a smile. Zhu Lingyun's eyes rippled as she looked at Yi Tianyun with gratitude. She did not expect that the person who would be holding her coronation ceremony would be Yi Tianyun. This made her feel that everything was perfect. At least in terms of glory, she had reached the highest level. Heavenly Cloud's great emperor, Zhu Lingyun came in front of Yi Tianyun and slowly knelt on one knee. Get up. Yi Tianyun gently raised his hand and let Zhu Lingyun get up. He looked at her ordinary face and said with a gratified smile, "Unknowingly, you have walked your own path and reached a new realm. I am very pleased about this. You becoming the saintess is what everyone wants." Zhu Lingyun's appearance was very ordinary. Even after breaking through to the God King stage, she still maintained her original ordinary appearance. But it was this ordinary appearance that became her trademark. Her appearance was very ordinary, but it always exuded a strong sense of affinity. It was more intimate than any beautiful face. "No, everything I have is given to me by Heavenly Cloud's great emperor. Without Heavenly Cloud's great emperor, it would be impossible for me to reach this point." Zhu Lingyun's eyes were full of gratitude. She had always been very grateful to Yi Tianyun. Even now, she felt that she would never be able to repay him. "Don't be so modest, I am just your guide. For you to be able to reach this step, it is inseparable from your hard work." Yi Tianyun smiled and said, "Now let me ask you, after you become the saintess, will you still maintain your original attitude and save the world?" "Yes, I will not forget my roots. I will always follow this goal and let the three realms coexist peacefully. I will make the three realms less and less painful, and more happy." Zhu Lingyun said firmly. Whether she became the saintess or not, she would stick to this goal. "Very well, then I will now grant you the title of saintess, and you will become the saintess of the three realms." Yi Tianyun came in front of Zhu Lingyun, took out a crystal crown, and gently put it on her head. At this moment, the audience cheered, and the sound of cheering resounded throughout the three realms. With such a prestigious Zhu Lingyun becoming the saintess, it was really what everyone expected. Successfully completed training saintess quest. Received 3,000 prestige points and stabilizing the three realms achievement. Stabilizing the three realms. With the existence of the saintess, the loyalty of the three realms will reach 100%, and no one will betray the three realms. Yi Tianyun was stunned. He didn't know such a heaven-defying thing existed. Now that he had returned, there were indeed many people who admired him, but there were still many who didn't trust him. After all, they had only heard of his deeds, and didn't know the real situation. Zhu Lingyun was different. She had been wandering around the three realms, and her prestige was even higher than Yi Tianyun's. Therefore, with her stabilizing the three realms, there would be no betrayal. He didn't expect to encounter such a special achievement after returning. Only with absolute loyalty, when one expands his power in the future, would his power be more stable. Zhu Lingyun was really a heaven-defying saintess. She really stabilized the three realms. He didn't know if she would be able to stabilize the celestial realm in the future. An absolutely loyal celestial realm was something unimaginable. No matter which power, their disciples would definitely be disloyal. Now that Zhu Lingyun was here, nothing would be a problem. "Big brother Yi, I will help you." Zhu Lingyun gripped the scepter in her hand, and smiled at him. "No, I should say that we will all support you, and work hard behind your back. You don't have to worry about anything, my sisters are working even harder than I am." Yi Tianyun was very touched. Looking around, he saw Yi Yuwei and the others were all here, and Yi Qingxian was beside him. All of them were following him, helping him. Without them, the three realms would have been in chaos. Violence alone couldn't solve everything, it would only make things worse. "I know, it's been hard on you all." Yi Tianyun smiled and waved his hand. Rays of divine light appeared in the air, enveloping their bodies. They were extremely eye-catching. "The three realms are glorious because of you all. The three realms didn't belong to him, it belonged to them." Chapter 1170. Since Zhu Lingyun became a saintess, the entire three realms celebrated with all kinds of celebrations and pardons. Everyone cheered for this, and after a week of celebration, everyone returned to their respective areas to cultivate. Many people didn't want to leave this place. However, they had their own things to do, so they had to leave and return to their respective areas. Soon, the lively three realms quickly calmed down, and life returned to its original state. Yi Tianyun also began to cultivate, and after thoroughly understanding the 5 heavenly path martial arts, he was doing well in all aspects. In a blink of an eye, he had stayed here for several years. Every time he came back, no matter how long it was It was always the warmest moment for him. When he cultivated, he was even more motivated than when he cultivated alone. However, he couldn't stay here forever. He still needed to break through to the level of the Lord of Heaven. If he wanted to break through to the level of the Lord of Heaven, he needed to face the terrifying heavenly tribulation. Then he couldn't stay here forever. After all, from the current situation, it was not enough to deal with the heavenly tribulation. He needed to further strengthen himself. Although he completed a lot of tasks and obtained a lot of crazy points, it was far from enough to level up. He still needed to accumulate a lot of crazy points to further improve himself. Tianyun, are you leaving? Shi Shuiyun felt something was wrong. Yi Tianyun was just sitting beside her, and he didn't say a word, but she noticed it. Yes, there are still a lot of things to do. Yi Tianyun smiled faintly, but don't worry, I can come back anytime, so don't worry about anything. With the teleportation godstone, he didn't need to worry about anything. He could come back whenever he wanted, but he couldn't bring people back. Unless they became his divine general, then he could use the divine general summoning token to summon them. Of course, he could put them in his inner world and use the teleportation godstone to fly away, but it was useless to bring them there now. He had some authority in the heavenly spring divine realm, but it wasn't much. Even if he brought a group of people with him, it wouldn't be easy. Shi Shuiyun didn't say much, nor did she try to persuade him to stay. She just quietly lay in his arms, enjoying the last moments of warmth. Without any sentimental words, Yi Tianyun turned around and left after a moment of tenderness, leaving Shi Shuiyun alone in the empty room. This scene had been repeated countless times, but Shi Shuiyun had no regrets. The only thing she could do now was to manage the three realms well. Every time Yi Tianyun returned, he would see a brand new three realms. Yi Tianyun used the teleportation godstone to teleport back to the heavenly spring god realm. The world was not in chaos. Everything was the same as usual. He had only disappeared for less than a year, so there was no need to worry about people looking for him everywhere. Unless he disappeared for a few hundred years, no one would be able to find him. A few years or even a few decades wouldn't be a problem. Just a little closed-door training would take up a lot of time. Thus, disappearing for a period of time wouldn't cause much trouble. Let's go to the three heavens divine realm and take a look. Yi Tianyun didn't rush to cultivate or find trouble with the evil spirit race. Instead, he went to the three heavens divine realm. He wanted to find the three heavenly kings. They were the protectors of the three realms. Without them, the three realms would have been destroyed. He wanted to find them and see what was going on. One of them, the king of the heavens, was his ancestor. After deciding on his target, he turned around and flew to the three heavens divine realm. Since his identity was more valuable than before, as long as it wasn't a restricted area, he would be allowed to pass. Thus, it wasn't a problem for him to pass through the passages to other divine realms. After leaving the heavenly spring god realm, he boarded the spirit ship and flew to the three heavens divine realm. The three heavens divine realm was quite far from the heavenly spring god realm. Coincidentally, during this period of time, Yi Tianyun continued to study the 5 martial arts manuals. Actually, he had already comprehended them, but he still wanted to study them. In his mind, he imagined how to circulate them smoothly. Stop right there. At this moment, a loud shout came from the front, causing him to open his eyes slowly. What he saw was 4 cultivators blocking his way. Their cultivation wasn't high. They were only at the 2nd or 3rd refinement of the Earth Monarch realm. Looking at their formation, it was obvious that they were here to rob him. Indeed, in the next moment, one of them shouted, "I opened this road, I planted these trees. If you want to leave, leave behind money." The vulgar robbery words almost made Yi Tianyun burst out laughing. Yi Tianyun flew out of the spirit ship and looked at the 4 of them. He said indifferently, "Where are the roads and trees here?" It was pitch black all around. Not to mention the roads and trees, there were even a pile of rocks flying around. T. The leading cultivator's face turned red and he shouted angrily, "If you want to live, leave behind all your money. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite." The 4 of them quickly surrounded him and completely sealed off his escape route. Their expressions were fierce and their movements were practiced. It was obvious that this wasn't their first time doing this. The Three Heavens Divine Realm was a natural gathering place for rogue cultivators. However, there were many similar robbers. In a situation where there were no resources, the fastest way to obtain resources was undoubtedly to rob others. It could be said that the Three Heavens Divine Realm was quite chaotic. This was because there was no region lord to manage it. The Three Heavens Divine Realm's overall resources were not bad, but it was much worse than other divine realms. At the same time, the area was not big. Therefore, not many people would take over this place. Especially since it was so chaotic here. If someone took over this place, there would be too many things to do. It wasn't worth it at all. As time passed, this place became more and more chaotic. Unless one was a rogue cultivator, no one would be willing to come here. However, the first-grade Divine Realm cultivators were still very willing to come here. No matter how bad the Three Heavens Divine Realm was, it was still a second-grade Divine Realm. The cultivation environment was much better than a first-grade Divine Realm. Yi Tianyun glanced at them. He stretched out his hand and flicked it lightly. A shadow appeared in front of them. There were 3 heads on this shadow. In fact, they were the heads of the heaven-creating Divine King and the others. These robbers must have seen a lot of people. Maybe they could recognize them. Have you seen them before? If you have, tell me. I can spare your life. I can even give you some compensation. Yi Tianyun said indifferently. Damn it. Don't be so arrogant. We are not here to inquire about information. We are here to rob. The leader of the robbers was furious. Kill him. Let this kid know our rules. Immediately, the 4 of them roared and rushed towards Yi Tianyun with their swords drawn. Kneel. Yi Tianyun's eyes turned cold. The power of the title of the #1 Earthlord of all times was immediately revealed. Against an Earthlord, there was absolute suppression power, directly compressing their strength by 1000%. As long as the difference in heavenly energy was relatively large, the suppression effect would quickly reach the strongest. Chapter 1171. The power of absolute suppression made the bandits feel a sense of powerlessness. They felt as if their strength had been withdrawn. That's right, it was withdrawn. They felt as if they couldn't exert any strength. No matter how hard they tried, they could only force out a little. They felt as if they had turned into mortals. This was the power of absolute suppression. When the opponent's heavenly Tao power was much weaker than their own, the effect would be very shocking. Now the effect was very shocking. The opponent had lost the ability to fight and could not resist at all. Their legs were so weak that they couldn't stand. An unprecedented fear surged in their hearts. They had never encountered something like this before. It was too terrifying. Even when facing the stronger Lord of Heaven, they didn't feel so powerless. After all, when facing the Lord of Heaven, they could at least turn and run. They didn't even have the chance to run. They directly knelt in front of Yi Tianyun. Their backs were already wet with cold sweat. What power is this? Their hearts trembled. They felt as if they weren't facing a hothead, but a nameless expert, and a very powerful one at that. I'll ask you one last time. Have you seen these 3 people? Yi Tianyun looked at them calmly. They looked at the image again. After looking carefully, they all turned their heads and said, No, we haven't seen them. Rip. Yi Tianyun waved his hand and one of them was quickly killed. He turned into a pile of ashes, not even a drop of blood was left. This caused one of them to be dead. He turned into a pile of experience points. We really haven't seen them. They are not related to us. We can't hide it. My lord, you must believe us. The leader was crying in fear. He constantly begged for mercy. He didn't have his previous ferocious demeanor. Yi Tianyun waved his hand again. The others turned into a pile of ashes. He killed without mercy. I really don't know. I know a place that is good at finding people. The leader hurriedly shouted, hoping that Yi Tianyun would spare his life. Speak, Yi Tianyun said. Yes, it's the Moon Spirit Pavilion in River Basin City. They specialize in collecting information. They should be able to find the people you want, the leader said truthfully. Very good. Then you can die. Yi Tianyun pressed down with his hand and the leader exploded. He turned into a pile of ashes. He didn't need to use any powerful strength. Just the power of this title was enough to easily crush them. It really was that under the Lord of Heaven, everyone was an ant. First, the suppression of energy, then the suppression of power. Then it was the suppression of power. He didn't know what had happened to the leader, but he was already dead. He couldn't even say what he wanted to say. The leader didn't know how, but he died. The last thing he wanted to say. Yi Tianyun thought. The reason was very simple. These fellows were all vicious and merciless people. Leaving behind money to buy the way was basically bullsh*t. He could tell at a glance that these people were people who killed and robbed. There was no need to show mercy to such people. If they deserved to be killed, then they would be killed without mercy. River Basin City's Moon Soul Pavilion? It's a place that specializes in selling information. You don't even need to mention it. I will go look for it. Yi Tianyun waved his hand and quickly flew forward. Normally, if one wanted to find someone, they would either go to a restaurant or the Moon Spirit Pavilion, which was similar to gathering information. The Moon Spirit Pavilion would provide missions or collect information about many people, which could be sold for money. He had looked for these people before, so he wasn't surprised. As he continued to fly, he encountered several groups of robbers along the way. It had to be said that there were so many robbers on this road. When they saw him flying over, some of them immediately intercepted him. Just like the robbers from before, they all wanted to extort some money from him. Some of them were willing to spare his life, while others wanted to silence him. Who would have thought that there would be so many bandits on such a short road? It had to be said that the Three Heavens divine realm was really too chaotic. If anyone came alone, they would really be dead. If they showed their face, they would immediately become a target. If they were lucky, they would at most be robbed. If they were unlucky, they would be chopped into 8 pieces. Hence, along the way, he killed many robbers. If they didn't come close, he couldn't be bothered with them. If they didn't know what to do and came close, he would kill them immediately. After flying for a while, a huge planet finally appeared in front of him. There was no doubt that it was the River Basin City that they had been talking about. After flying in, he saw that the River Basin City was very wide. However, the cultivators here were very mixed. Most of the races were here. However, their levels were relatively low. If their levels were high, they wouldn't be here. Instead, they would have been chosen by other divine territories. Most of the people here were not very talented, and their race's abilities were relatively low. There were also people with special abilities. They didn't like to join other forces because they didn't like the feeling of restriction. It was a pretty good choice to be a king here. Hence, although this place was very mixed, there were also experts. Yi Tianyun glanced around. Among them, there were many Lord of Heaven here. As for divine lords, they definitely wouldn't run around the streets. At least, Lord of Heaven level experts were relatively common here. There were also many Earth Lords above the 5th or 6th refinement. In short, the biggest problem here was that it was too chaotic. If one was not careful, they would die without a burial place. After all, there were no rules here. Once they left the River Basin City, they wouldn't even know how they died outside. If they wanted to survive here, they had to keep a low profile. Otherwise, they definitely wouldn't live past tomorrow. This place is really mixed. Yi Tianyun glanced to the side. There was a strong man who happened to meet his eyes and immediately stared back at him. "Kid, what are you looking at? Believe it or not, I will stab your eyes blind," the strong man at the 4th refinement said sternly. Yi Tianyun couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. He turned his head and looked forward. He couldn't be bothered to look at the strong man. He just happened to look at him. When the strong man saw that Yi Tianyun wasn't looking at him, he thought that Yi Tianyun was afraid and laughed loudly. From the initial robbers to the local ruffians here, he knew that the Three Heavens divine territories were chaotic enough. The more chaotic a place was, the easier it was for a crisis to erupt. The heaven-creating divine king and the others were here. He wondered what the situation was like. Would they be plotted against by others? Thinking of this, he sped up and headed to the Moon Spirit Pavilion. After spending a lot of effort, he finally found the Moon Spirit Pavilion. Standing at the entrance, he was really shocked when he sized up the Moon Spirit Pavilion. The Moon Spirit Pavilion wasn't very eye-catching. It was just a small house. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see it. Chapter 1172. This is the Moon Spirit Pavilion? Isn't it a little too simple? Yi Tianyun knew that a lot of things could not be understood just by looking at the surface. However, wasn't this Moon Spirit Pavilion a little too low-key? If it wasn't for the simple signboard outside with the words Moon Spirit Pavilion carved on it, he wouldn't have been able to tell. He didn't think too much about it. He lifted his feet and walked in. The moment he entered, a rotten smell wafted out from inside. It was suffocating. Yi Tianyun frowned. Isn't this place a little too shabby? After he entered, he saw a small old man sitting on the side. He was holding a fan and slowly fanning himself. A cool breeze blew gently, blowing away the stench. This old man's cultivation was not low. He was at the 6th level of the Lord of Heaven, which was a pretty good level. Who would have thought that he would be dressed so sloppily here? He didn't like to bathe, and his body stank. He looked like an ordinary old man, but Yi Tianyun knew that he wasn't simple. He was a type of disguise that could make people lower their guard. In the entire Moon Spirit Pavilion, it looked like there was only this old man. There was no one else. In the entire room, there was basically only one chair, and the old man was lying on it. There wasn't even a table or chair. When he entered, the old man slowly sat up. The fan in his hand was slightly cold. With his cultivation, he was basically impervious to fire and water. How could he still feel hot? But he liked this feeling, so he kept waving his fan. "Oh, are you here to accept a mission or to ask for information?" the old man asked slowly. "I'm here to ask for information." Yi Tianyun didn't suspect that the old man was a liar. With his cultivation, it would be a waste of his talent. It would be better for him to join a decent power. He believed that the robbers from before wouldn't lie. They were on the verge of death, so it was impossible for them to lie. If you want information about cultivators, you need a mid-grade reincarnation level weapon. If you want information about treasures, you need 2 mid-grade reincarnation level weapons. Forget it, it's too troublesome. I'm too lazy to explain. Just tell me what you want to know. The old man lazily lay back down, looking even more casual. I want to ask about the situation of these 3 people. I wonder where they appeared. Yi Tianyun released the appearance of the 3 people for the old man to see. The old man casually glanced at them and said slowly, 3 people? Then I'll need 3 medium-grade reincarnation level weapons. Deliver them first. Without saying a word, Yi Tianyun threw out 3 mid-grade reincarnation grade weapons. Although the 3 of them would probably be together, he still took out 3 items to prove his sincerity in order to get a clearer picture. The old man waved his hand and put away the 3 mid-grade reincarnation grade weapons. He smiled and said, as expected of the genius who has been in the limelight recently, not only did you complete the Heavenly Lord path, but you also achieved amazing results in the God Creation Palace. It's really surprising that a human could reach this stage. Yi Tianyun squinted at him. Without a doubt, this old man was showing off his skills in front of him. From the side view, he could tell that this old man really did collect information, and he was very accurate. Now, he could accurately describe Yi Tianyun's situation. With just one look, he was able to recognize him. Yi Tianyun did not change his appearance. If he couldn't even recognize him, Yi Tianyun really did not believe in the Moon Spirit Pavilion's ability. As expected of the Moon Spirit Pavilion. It looks simple and crude, but its information collection is top-notch. Yi Tianyun smiled faintly and did not get angry. If I can't even do this, how would I dare to open the Moon Spirit Pavilion here? The old man smiled faintly and said, the situation of your 3 friends is a little complicated. According to the latest information, they were captured by bandits as subordinates. The 3 of them are quite capable, so they were immediately targeted and placed in different positions. If it were anyone else, they would have been killed long ago. The main thing is that they have some value. The old man flicked his hand, and an astrolabe landed in Yi Tianyun's hand. He said, this is their current position. As for the latest information, I'm not very sure. This happened half a month ago. Unless there are major changes, you should be able to find them based on this. Yi Tianyun took the astrolabe and immediately saw the coordinates of the three of them. Everyone's position was different. Thinking about it carefully, the three of them cultivated differently, so they would definitely be placed in different areas. He originally thought that he would be given a simple summary of the situation. Who knew that he would be given such detailed coordinates? This Moon Spirit Pavilion was really shocking. Its ability to collect information was really shocking. He didn't know where it came from. I'll give you a piece of information for free. The bandits are a big force in the Three Skies Holy Realm. They have many powerful Lord of Heaven and even God Lords. You can either ransom them or steal them. It's up to you. With your achievements, it won't be a problem for the Heavenly Spring Holy Realm to send some experts over to help you, the old man reminded him in a friendly manner. Thank you for the reminder. If I need any information in the future, I will come again. Yi Tianyun was very happy. If he needed any resources in the future, he could come and find him. Thank you for your patronage. The old man smiled faintly and lay back down, continuing to fan himself. After Yi Tianyun left, the old man smiled faintly and said, I didn't expect to meet the sect master's junior brother. Even though he's just a disciple, who knows what the future holds? I have to report this to the sect master. After saying that, he flicked his finger, and a crystal shot into the wall beside him. The wall trembled slightly, and for some unknown reason, the crystal disappeared. After Yi Tianyun got the coordinates, he immediately flew to their location. Using the principle of proximity, he saved the heaven-creating Divine King first. The heaven-creating Divine King could be considered half his master. After all, he had received many of his inheritances. Xianlong Dragon Sect, if anything happens to them, I will definitely bury you. Yi Tianyun's eyes turned cold. If anything happened to one of the three guardians, he would definitely vent his anger on the Xianlong Dragon Sect. He would bury all the experts of the Xianlong Dragon Sect. The Xianlong Dragon Sect was the bandit sect. It was a very shocking force. It was considered one of the bigger forces in the Three Skies Holy Realms. It had a wide range of forces. He was now heading to one of the cities, Phylong City.